You guys see this clip of Joe Biden today? He like did some speech either like in Atlanta or somewhere else. He sounds totally fine. Like, did they like... They make him do like vocal warm-ups and shot his throat before he started the other night? Because like... Too much Ambien. I was trying to see if I could find it, but I guess I can't. Either way, he sounds like... Oh, wait, here we go. Here's a clip. Like...
I give you my word as a Biden, I would not be running again if I didn't believe with all my heart and soul I can do this job. Because quite frankly...
Sounds totally fine.
The stakes are too high. The stakes are too high.
Sneeg loves Sneeg whip.
You know, see what I'm saying? Like, I don't get it. What was the problem yesterday? It's too sleepy. He was sleepy. He was afraid of me. He was shaking in his boots. He's scared of his daddy.
Scottish freak here. I thought our politics/debates were a joke, but yesterday's debate was so silly. Lamau Sneeg fellow.
Right. Anyway, I thought I enjoyed the React Andy a little too well yesterday. And I have said that I want to do more, but find stuff to do before we start stream, and I have. So we're going to do this and see where it goes. Anyway. Meow, man, thank you for the 42 months. Mini Fish, thank you for the 34. Did you feel that? Thank you for the 3 months. Spicy Ranch, thank you for the 8. Nico, thank you for the 37. Deer King, Mikey, thank you for the 18. Miss Frogger, thank you for the year. Asher Lee Jenkins, thank you for the 16. Goblin Tease, thank you for the 7. Sabu, thanks for gifting out 5 subs. Rory, thank you for the 18 months. Charlie, thanks for giving 3 months to Null Void. Astra Muse, thank you for the 18. Lilycat, thank you for the 20. MKVP, thank you for the 11. Kira, thank you for the 7 months. Ads play every 30 minutes and ads about to play. If you don't have a sub, you're going to have an ad most likely. It supports me and my family, especially my daughter. So if you have some problem with ads, I can't help you. It's not... Well, it is my problem, but it's not my problem because I'm not going to fix it or change it because it's at a point that I'm satisfied with because I got to take care of my family. And if that's not understandable, I can't help you. So, let's start the video. Thanks for the subs, Goblin Tease. Damn. W's, please. So if you have a Prime sub laying around, you might want to use it now and refresh the stream. If you have a sub and sub today, you have to refresh. Otherwise, Twitch thinks you still have a non-sub and they'll give you an ad potentially. So refresh your stream if you have a sub. If you do sub right now, you refresh the stream and ad's about to play. Let's get into it. We're going to be watching Unmasking a Killer Serial Arsonist, which is a really weird title, but is it by Real Horror? It seems like it's supposed to say serial killer arsonist, but I guess it could be he kills and he's repetitively committing arsony. I don't know, bro. You could do it either way, I guess. I'm just nitpicking. I don't know why. Comprehensive and respectful recollection of events that are historically significant and is for education purposes only. The crimes within are not endorsed. While no graphic imagery is shown and no graphic descriptions are given, viewer discretion is advised. Bakersfield, California, 19...
When arson investigator Captain Marvin Casey was
so
called
loud.
out to a fire that had broken out at a craft store, he had no idea what he was about to get himself into.
What's the volume like, chat?
It had been
turn
a
it down,
small fire,
keep it there.
quickly put out by the manager, so its point of origin was obvious. And it didn't take Marvin long to find the device that had
Thanks for the
started
sub,
it.
Demi.
A cigarette, designed to burn down to 3 matches. Whoever had done this was experienced,
Interesting.
but they had just made
They stuck 3 matches at the bottom of the
huge
cigarette?
mistake. Because next to that device, Marvin found a single piece of paper containing a fingerprint, and that fingerprint would eventually lead investigators to the most prolific arsonist of the 20th century. A vicious and cold-blooded killer who had been terrorizing California for years, burning buildings to the ground with people still inside.
A really interesting, I almost said fun, but it's not that fun. A really interesting thing about arsonists and bombers is they create a signature within their delivery. It's very interesting. So like they'll do specific stuff in order to like, yeah, it's like a flourish. It's like a calling card. You know what I mean? Like the cigarette, like the 3 matches within a cigarette, that's a signature. Like that's their like signature move, or how they're able to do it, or how their thing, like their igniter or explosive functions. So stuff like that. What are some high profile ones? There was a bomber who put wood in his bombs, and I can't remember which one it was. It might have been the Unabomber, but I can't remember. I don't know if I should Google what bombers put in their bombs. That doesn't seem like a good Google search. So I'm not going to do that. That seems like a stupid idea. It was Unabomber. I thought so. There's not really a whole lot of other like prolific bombers. I don't know. I mean, there's some, but compared to like the amount and stuff like that, I don't know. In Roblox.
But not only was that man,
Anyway, arsonists do the same thing. They'll do specific,
anybody would have
either
expected.
how they ignite
And one of
it
the
or
most
what they put in
bizarre
it,
twists I've
what the
ever come
catalyst
across.
is, stuff like
He
that.
seems to have unwittingly confessed to it all.
And then you start a race against the clock because you're fearful.
You never know about a person, you know. We all have our
He
secret
got caught and
lives
just
that
admitted
nobody
to it?
gets into.
I'm smarter. I'm better. I can set all these fires right in front of all your noses, and you don't know who I am.
Whoa. Okay, Zodiac, relax.
At 8:20 with MG Kelly, I can tell that look in your eye. You're looking forward to this weekend. Maybe go out and do a little drinking. I know. I want you to be careful,
Drinking.
though, because they're out there. P is watching for you. They are not going to let the speeders get by, and obviously if you get caught with
The year is 1980, and Los Angeles is now the second largest city in the United States.
Is that the Beatles?
And in 1981, the city would celebrate its 200th year with the slogan, LA's the place.
La's the place.
Los Angeles, The Economist declared, has at last become a place to take seriously. Patronising British journalism aside, the growth was hard to ignore. A new skyline had emerged, new freeways, new tourist attractions, cultural institutions, and of course, a
how I
film
feel about
industry
living
that
in
was
Fayetteville,
still in the
man.
halcyon days of the Hollywood blockbuster
Shit's grown like
era.
crazy.
Oh yeah, LA was it.
You
And by
can't
the
drive
time
anywhere
the city
around
came
here
to
without
host the
there being
1984
construction
Summer
for a big
Olympic Games,
project.
its reputation was cemented.
Los Angeles has definitively left its imprint on
Crazy.
the world.
And the rest of us could only watch its frenetic, dreamlike, palm tree-lined growth through a small TV screen. For many, LA really was the place. But while Los Angeles might have felt like the centre of the world to some, to others, it felt more like a city on the edge.
Edge of what?
This rapid urbanisation had come at a cost.
Bro, even in the 80s, their
Record
highways were
levels
full of
pollution,
cars.
smog so bad you could cut it with a
Just
knife,
152
increasing poverty,
months left.
overcrowding,
PT
racial hostility,
165,
almost
PT
unfathomable levels of police
165,
brutality and
PT
corruption had all coalesced
165,
to make
just in
Los
case it
Angeles
disrupts
the second
prime
most
time.
dangerous
Fair.
city in America,
Appreciate it.
and a city with a reputation as the serial killer capital. No doubt Los Angeles was a city donning a
Oh,
glorious
LA killers.
Ozymandian facade, a mask. On the outside, she was a decadent world-class city, but underneath, she was both seething and chaotic. The perfect place for a monster on the verge of frenzy. It was 1984, and for the past few years, one such monster had been terrorizing the quiet neighborhoods of the Los Angeles metropolitan area from the shadows. A serial arsonist, using the rising levels of crime and general unrest as a kind of camouflage. You see, arson was a problem that had been growing in Los Angeles since the late 1970s, where fires by arsonists had increased by more than 400%. By the mid-1980s, the level of fires being deliberately set in the Los Angeles metropolitan area was understandably starting to worry its residents, and was regularly making headlines.
I douse my entire house in water,
seemed to be getting
and I throw sand on it.
West Hollywood, Pasadena, Glendale, and more. They were all seeing an unusual number of fires.
Damn, Pasadena.
While nobody had really made the link between some of those fires and a single serial arsonist, things had become so bad that by the early 80s, some cities had put together their own specialist arson teams. And for a while at least, that worked. Until it didn't. The arsonist had simply been biding his time, and now he was about to strike again. Only this time, things would escalate.
I'm sorry to hear that, PG.
As anybody knows,
okay.
Up until 1984, this mysterious lone arsonist's actions, though devastating, hadn't yet led to any loss of life. But that was sadly about to change in one of the most horrific ways imaginable.
Well, does he have a Raleigh Fingers mustache?
The game all serial arsonists play was an incredibly dangerous one. And it was only a matter of time before things would get out of control. And it could have been any night, during any of the fires he'd already set, but it just so happened to be the night of October 10th, 1984, in a city called Pasadena. Pasadena is located in the northeast area of Los Angeles County,
by the Rose Bowl,
just 11 miles from LA's downtown area. Back in the 80s, it was home to a 42,000 square foot strip mall, which housed a number of shops and restaurants, the biggest by far being a hardware store called Ole's.
Whatever you need, Ole's has it. In fact, if you...
From furniture to frying pans, Ole's hardware store sold everything you could possibly want for your home, and then some. Plus, once you were done shopping, you could grab something to eat at one of the nearby food outlets.
So
for many of Pasadena's well-to-do residents, Ole's was actually kind of a fun day out. But on this night in particular, Billy and Ada Deal were on a mission. They had some specific items they needed to pick up, and they needed to make it quick because they'd brought along their 2.5-year-old grandson, Matthew, who they were babysitting.
Why is he so far away?
As soon as they pulled into the parking lot at around 7:30 p.m, Matthew did what any 2.5-year-old does when they detect an ice cream shop in the nearby vicinity, and he started begging for his usual, a scoop of mint chocolate chip ice cream. It was late, so rather than risk a tantrum, Billy and Ada promise him one just as soon as they're done. And just like magic, Matthew is now significantly more agreeable to the task of sourcing lumber and paint, the two items on Billy and Ada's list. And with that, into the store they go. At some point just before 8 p.m, Billy and Ada split up. Billy went to size up some wood in the west side of the store, and Ada took Matthew to the northeast section of the store to look at tins of paint. See, Ole's was at one point 2 separate stores, so it was separated by a large internal wall.
I love when stores
do this. A sprinkler system operated on the west side, but not on the east, the side that Matthew and Ada were on. At the time, this was technically up to regulation because of the installation of several large fire doors.
I love when stores have separation. We were in Alabama for a wedding, and I went to some liquor store. No reason. And when you enter, you could like go left or right, and one side was liquor and the other was beer and wine. I don't know why, it's just super cool. But like the checkout was in one spot. So like the clerks were in the middle of the store, and like one was on the liquor side and the other was on the beer side. It was really cool. I love when stuff is set up like that. It's just very satisfying.
Doors in between the two sections, a design that would end up being fatal. It was just a few minutes later when a loud noise was heard across the store, an indistinguishable announcement blaring over the store speakers. Over in the lumber section, Billy heard it and remembered thinking that perhaps it was closing time. It was then that he heard the screaming and saw a number of very panicked-looking workers running through the central fire doors. They were saying that there was a fire and they were yelling at him to leave, but he knew that Ada and Matthew were in that section. So he opened one of those central fire doors. And when he did, all he saw was thick black smoke.
Right, created a bit of a vacuum.
He ran
too.
to try the other door, but it was the same. He then ran back towards the entrance, thinking that maybe Ada and Matthew were there waiting for him. Meanwhile, inside the building, Jim Obdam, a young store attendant, was desperately telling people to leave. The fire was spreading fast and the lights had started going out in that east section, but he knew there were people still inside, so he stayed. At some point, he ran into Ada and Matthew and he screamed at them that they needed to leave, and together the three made their way to the front of the store.
I don't know why it's really funny that he's like, I like
Minutes
the idea.
Later, when Jim turned around to check that they were still following, he realised that they'd become separated. But now the lights were completely out and the fire was spreading rapidly, so he did.
I just really like the idea of there being like big plumes of fire and somebody like telling somebody they have to get out of the room. It's like, yeah, I don't know. Like at that point, it's like pretty established that we should probably leave.
Did the only thing that he could. He crawled on his hands and knees in the dark, feeling his way along a wall to an exit. Before long, he was back outside, breathing in the night air. He didn't realise it at the time because of the adrenaline, but he was covered head to toe in burns. Sitting outside, he watched on as the flames overtook the building and people scrambled out of its exits, some making it out by the skin of their teeth. The speed at which this fire had taken over this football pitch-sized warehouse was almost
implications of what happened to grandma and grandson.
Some employees remembered being literally swept off their feet and blown out of the fire exits. One described it as a tsunami of fire. The technical term is a flashover. It's when the entire contents of a room erupt in flame due to an intense heat of more than 1,000 degrees. At this point, the fire was burning so hot that the heat caused
Why is there a Dunkin' Donuts and a Baskin Robbins on here?
To melt, which meant that they had now rolled down.
Why is that in the model?
It's meant to help compartmentalize the fire, limiting its oxygen. But in this case,
thank you, Baskin Robbins, for advertising this video.
And those outside could only listen on, helplessly. According to later reports, those doors could have been opened manually, but at the time, for whatever reason, possibly inadequate health and safety training, no one was able to. Firefighters were on the scene in minutes, but this was a disaster, a huge building full of highly flammable materials and a sprinkler system that only covered half of it. By this point, Billy was beside himself, and he begged the firefighters to help him find his wife and grandson. They told him that they would get them out, and they really tried.
Sprinklers.
They charged the line of fire with a fog nozzle, only to be blasted backwards within minutes.
Oh no.
And they tried the doors, and Billy tried with them, but they weren't budging. In the end, Billy and those with loved ones inside could only watch on helplessly as their entire worlds were destroyed.
Wow, I hate that.
Ada Deal, Matthew Troidel, Jimmy Satina, Carolyn Krause. Not just statistics or names in a newspaper, but real people who were loved deeply. Unknown to you or I, but they shared with us the most important yet fleeting of things. A life. And in minutes,
I hate
that was snatched away.
The 2-year-old man.
Back on the ground, the local fire department was now in desperate need of help, and units from 9 different surrounding areas had been dispatched. But as the unit's fire captain listened into the radio, he was confused, because it looked like units were being dispatched in the wrong direction. And that's because 2 other fires had broken out. One at a grocery store about 3 miles south from Ole's, and then another arson attack in a larger supermarket about 6 miles east. The firefighters didn't know it then, but somebody was trying to create a distraction. In the end, it would take hours to bring the fire under control. By morning, all that was left was part of a crumbling external wall and a pile of smouldering ruins. It wouldn't take them long to find the fire's victims. All 4 were found together in the northeast section of the store. According to the firefighters that found them, It appeared that Jimmy Satina and Carolyn Krause had re-entered the store to help others. All were found just 2 meters from the emergency exit door.
Oh.
Now the extent of the disaster was clear. Everybody wanted answers, including the arson investigators that would arrive on the scene. Jim Allen, a California state fire marshal and
That's
arson
awful.
investigator, remembered the scene being complete chaos.
So
He'd arrived
close.
a little
It's
after
possible
Glendale
they
fire
were
arson
there.
investigator
It's just the
John
door was
Orr, who had been
closed.
assigned as the arson explosive supervisor.
That's what bothers
The two
me.
men were
They said that the
highly
door was closed and
experienced,
somebody could
though
open
they
it, but
covered
nobody
two different
did.
areas, they knew each other well.
They could have
both
been able
went
to
straight
get out,
work
it's just
trying
the
to
door
figure
was
out
shut.
What had happened. They spent hours working their way through the rubble, looking
That's what
for
bothers me.
evidence of a point of origin, the place where the fire could have started. But their
They
investigation
tried? They
had
said
to
they didn't
pause.
try.
This was now a crime scene, and
Said-
the
yeah, they said
LASD,
nobody knew-
the Los
knew
Angeles
how to.
Sheriff's Department, would be taking over. And it was mere hours later when a
training.
sergeant called everyone on the
Lucky.
scene for a meeting to declare the findings. An electrical problem in the attic. Both Jim Allen and John Orr were furious. They made this abundantly clear. This investigation had happened far too quickly, but law enforcement and fire department relations were tenuous. Long story short, the LASD outranked them, and they were publicly reminded of that fact. There was a full-blown argument, but eventually the arson investigators gave in and spent the night drinking beers and cursing the sergeant. John in particular was livid.
I like this
Jim specifically remembered feeling
illustration
overwhelming guilt.
style. It looks
They
like
both
super
knew
hot.
better than to try and go up against the entire Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. So, for now at least, they let it go. For John, though, the circumstances surrounding the fire
Super
were far beyond the
hot.
realms of coincidence. You see, that night, John was called out to those 2 supermarket fires. They were both determined to be arson. 2 fires set in potato chip display stands. It was the perfect crime. Potato chips are extremely oily and therefore extremely flammable. This wasn't the first time this had happened, though.
Cruel logic.
In fact, this person was so notorious for doing this, they'd earned themselves a nickname.
Potato chip
Frito
firebug.
Bandito. John explained to Jim Allen that he thought the potato chip fires were supposed to be distractions from the Bandito's real fire.
Frito Bandito? What?
Arson investigators in the LA metropolitan area had been
Bro, people
compiling
were goofy
information
as
about the
fuck in
so-called
the 80s.
Frito
That's
Bandito
crazy.
for a while now.
People were just
It was
having
called, rather appropriately,
fun with life,
the
huh?
potato chip file.
She said
theorized
that's so
the area
dead
the potato-
serious. That's the best
Frito
part.
Bandito. Doing this, they'd earned themselves a nickname, the Frito Bandito.
Frito Bandito.
John explained to Jim Allen that he thought the potato chip fires were supposed to be distractions from the Bandito's
Frito
real
Bandito.
fire, Olays. Arson investigators in the LA metropolitan area had been compiling information about the
Wow.
so-called Frito Bandito for a while now. It was called, rather appropriately, the potato chip file. They theorized that this Frito Bandito character was also responsible for a number of other fires which had
I
started
cannot.
in similar
You
ways.
gotta quit saying
The
that,
MO
girl. I
seemed to be
cannot take it
strikingly
seriously.
similar each time.
Frito
Fires
Bandito.
always set in highly combustible materials, always in a retail store, and always during opening hours. And in one of those fires, they'd collected what appeared to be a delayed incendiary device.
Ooh.
A cigarette, burning down to 3 matches, wrapped
Here.
in a rubber band. By the time arson investigator John Orr got the news of the
Wild
suspicious
how that
potato
cigarette
chip
butt
fires
just
that
doesn't-
happened alongside
didn't
Olays
get
to
messed up
the
in the
investigator
fire.
who'd been pulling together this potato chip file, it was too late. The wreckage
Yeah, it's
left
just like
behind
a
at
mound of
Olays had been
cigarettes.
cleared, and with it, any evidence of arson.
Super blatant.
If this was the Frito Bandito,
I think it was some
investigators
random
were out of
electrical
luck.
mishap.
They'd just have to wait for him to strike again. And well, wouldn't you know it?
Could have
A
been
few days
anything,
later,
really.
another hardware store, the Builder's Emporium of North Hollywood, went up in
Damn,
flames.
like within days,
And
this
then,
guy's just
a few months
igniting
later,
shit.
Another, smaller Olays, again in Pasadena, nearly suffered the same fate. Luckily, the fire was put out almost immediately, but it could have been a disaster because thousands were gathered along the nearby street for an annual parade. These 2 hardware store fires should have set a larger investigation in motion, but they didn't. Back then, the systems just weren't in place.
Yeah, imagine
You
a
see,
cop
John
not
wasn't
catching
part
on a
of the
trail.
Pasadena arson unit. He was part of the Glendale unit. He'd just been dispatched to Pasadena the night of the Olays fire because he was in the area. As for the LAFD investigator and his potato chip file, well, his responsibility was the city of Los Angeles, not Pasadena. All this to say, Los Angeles City is huge. and Los Angeles County is even bigger, and communication wasn't great. It could, and arguably should have all ended there.
It still is, by the way. This is a common issue, because obviously it's totally fair and expected for police to respond to stuff even outside of their jurisdiction if they're close enough. But police have a really hard time communicating between districts, and it leads to a lot of problems with investigations that cross district lines and stuff because they're just not good in general, but like they're not good at communicating their problems or their information like well, because there's a weird like territorial stuff, and it's just there's not a system in place that's good for them to do so, etc.
Because the arson team on the scene of that second Olays fire found something strange at the fire's point of origin. A delayed incendiary device made up of, you guessed it, a cigarette burning down to 3 matches, wrapped in a rubber band.
Yes.
This was absolutely the same guy, and later on, it would become clear that this was more than just a piece of evidence to be bagged and entered into a system. It was a message from the arsonist. And that message was loud and clear. I'm still here, and not a single one of you are smart enough to catch me.
Rito bandito. Yeah, it's going to be a cop.
The coming of fall in California heralds the arrival of strong winds. Monos in the north, Santa Anas in the south. Sometimes bitingly cold, but more often hot, and always dry. The problem is usually less acute in the north because the intensity of the wind is
either
less.
that or one of the.
However, in the south, the variety of heavy vegetation covering the hillsides and mountain slopes dehydrates.
That's what I would expect.
Becomes an open tinderbox.
Ah, California. The American dream writ large. Why you can reach out anywhere and pick an orange, Steinbeck once sardonically mused. And it never gets cold. Well, actually it does. And it also gets very hot. In fact, it's a state that sees more wildfires than any other. According to one bioclimatologist, in pretty much every single way, a perfect recipe for fire is just written in to California. It's hot, it's dry, and at certain points in the year, it's windy too. The Santa Ana and the Diablo winds, as they're known, are part of the state's natural weather cycle, but they massively increase the wildfire risk. They make it a lot easier for fires to spread. And whoever was responsible for the alarming increase of fires on the foothills of Northern California in the years after the Olays fire absolutely knew this. With Olays now bulldozed and the report conclusively stating that it was an accidental fire that had started in the electrical system of the attic, arson and Olays were not to be talked about publicly or privately or even acknowledged, let alone in the context of a serial arsonist. And in the years that followed, residents in the towns of the northern LA metropolitan area began to get hammered once again by a string of arson fires. Glendale, Burbank, Pasadena, Crescenta Valley.
Not Crescenta.
Fires would break out.
I've never been.
Usually on a foothill somewhere, usually after 4 p.m. And other fires too, set in alleyways or carports or
actually that's not true. I think we looked at a house to rent in Crescenta Valley when we were thinking about moving to LA.
And then distraction fires.
It was crazy.
It was Glendale, the 4th largest city in LA, located about 10 miles north of downtown, that seemed to be getting hit the hardest though. Reported arsons were up 78% in 1985. This was John Orr's territory, and the problem was so bad that he was now part of the 2-man arson investigation unit. Of course, it didn't take long before that unit began to attribute some of these fires to the work of a single arsonist. Likely the same arsonist that had set the potato chip fires, because the arsonist's calling card, that delayed incendiary device consisting of a single cigarette, was being found seemingly everywhere. Was this, the unit began to ask, the Frito Bandito? Quote, it appears his operations have stepped up quite a bit lately. It's very specific.
It's really hard.
Fortunately, nobody has been hurt, but every time he lights a fire, there's a greater chance somebody is going to get hurt.
It's extremely possible. It is possible. It's hard to this may be shocking, but arsonists and bombers don't exactly have like a group chat. They don't really share their signatures. And it's not really common for people to mimic them because yeah. So the cigarette and 3 matches is a very specific thing. So I mean, like, somebody else could have done 4, 5, 2, etc. Like, you know, it's a very specific igniter. So
to Dennis Wilson, one half of the Glendale arson unit. And he's not kidding, people were barely escaping with their lives. In one particularly terrifying instance, a basement garage fire blocked a family's only exit from their burning 2-story apartment building. Even the firefighters were surprised that they managed to survive. In spite of all the evidence, that lone arsonist theory was far from a widely held view. Quote, "We're not attributing it to the same person, but we're not ruling the possibility out," commented the captain of the nearby Burbank Fire Department. The fact that the arsonist would take month-long breaks only to come back with slight tweaks to his previous MO certainly didn't help matters. But he'd always come back, and when he did, things would always escalate. By 1986, it was Doug Staub's turn on the Glendale arson unit. In the year and a half he worked within the unit, he saw more fires than he did for the rest of his career combined.
Whoa.
It was bad. Hundreds of acres were being set alight, entire homes burned to the ground. But something had changed now. Working together, the two began to find the same cigarette and 3-match incendiary devices. But this time, they had coins attached to them.
Coins?
It didn't take them long to realise that the arsonist had done this to give weight to their devices. These devices were being found so often that the arsonist had earned themselves a brand new nickname, the coin tosser, and oh how relevant that second part of the name will eventually become. It was also around this time that the arson investigation teams, particularly those in Glendale, started getting the first witness descriptions. A white man with dark hair, normal height, average build, in his 20s, maybe early 30s, driving a van or maybe a truck. Not exactly specific,
I don't
but
know,
it did
Frito
at least
Bandito
narrow
is
it
way
down.
better, but that's fine.
Still, as the summer of '86 drew to a
Just
close,
me.
the Glendale arson units were no closer to catching the elusive coin tosser, and so a series of bizarre mind games began. At one point, after his trademark
Bro, did you
device
see
was
that guy's
found on a
mutton
particularly
chops?
bizarre mind game.
God damn, bro. What is happening here? Whoa.
Games began. At one point, after his trademark device was
Yikes.
found on a particularly bad hillside fire that had destroyed several homes, investigators began
Is a
theorizing that
tosser
the
a
arsonist
term? Yeah,
was
it's a
disguising
it's
himself
British
as a
slang for,
photographer
like,
and then
asshole.
returning to the scene to watch, perhaps
Oh, maybe they're
taunt
implying it's a British
investigators.
person?
Then, of course, there was the time he showed up at a gift and home accessories store in Burbank. When the inevitable fire started, the owner of that store wasn't able to get through to emergency services. When she escaped the store, she luckily ran into a deputy sheriff just hanging out in the alleyway. Panicking, she told him she was really worried about the old man living next door. And then this mysterious deputy sheriff quickly sprang into action, jumping the fence to warn the man. When the firefighters
he's
finally arrived,
mysteriously
the
there,
elusive
huh?
sheriff was nowhere to be seen. Of course, the sheriff was the coin tosser playing yet more mind games, though he had just made himself extremely recognisable to the shop owner, which feels like one of those decisions that will have consequences somewhere down the line.
Very
That's the
common.
weird thing about the coin tosser. He makes some pretty risky and brazen choices, yet somehow, he always has this uncanny ability to disguise himself, to blend into a crowd. Every
shit,
time
he's just a
Doug
guy.
and John thought they had something, a suspect, a clear van description, for example, they chase the lead all
It's
around
not like he's
town,
like a
and
decrepit
would
guy with
always
a
come to
lighter,
nothing.
like flicking it and shit.
Still, there could be
With a cigarette with 3 matches in his mouth, being like, yeah, they never suspect anything from me. He's just a fucking dude. This is why people are always so shocked by like serial killers just like looking totally normal. It's like, because they're just normal looking people. They're fucked up on the inside, but like, it's not like they look like, you know, they don't walk around with a knife in hand. You know what I mean? Like it's always such a funny comment to me when people are like, hey, he's just so normal. I just can't, I just didn't expect him to be so crazy or so normal looking. It's like, yeah, we're all just normal people. Like it's really not that big of a deal. It's really like, I don't know. Everybody's looking for some like, yeah, some cartoon movie shit where it's a guy like, I've eluded them again. It's like,
no doubt that things were now
I mean, maybe they're
escalating.
thinking that,
And
but
with
like,
that escalation came the risk of making a mistake.
But
But if investigators were
very
going to catch
common.
this guy, that mistake.
very common for like people who do like arsony, like bombs, serial killing, stuff like that. Very common for them to approach the crime scene to kind of see the damage that was done. It's kind of a, excuse me, there's like a not always a sexual release, but like a satisfaction to it, which is sometimes sexual, but they want to see their work be viewed and terrored, stuff like that. Yeah, it's an ego thing. So very common. Very common. Lots of serial killers did it. Still do it, I guess. Yeah.
Mistake would need to be a big one. Something undeniable that would be impossible to explain
Which is
away.
probably not
Something
common knowledge back
like a
then.
fingerprint.
What the hell is on the TV?
It's always time to make the donuts.
Always time to make the donuts.
This is Walter Heath at Outpost Freestead, approximately 33 kilometers northeast of Neoleston. This is an emergency and we are seeking assistance and rescue services. Anyone, please respond.
I can't see channel points on my Chatterina.
Let me introduce you to a found footage horror fiction podcast called The White Vault. It's set in Svalbard, where an international rescue and repair team is sent to discover the source of a mysterious signal at a remote research station.
Good introduction to an ad,
Now,
but
if you were an arsonist
can't do that.
wanted to really send a message, there could be no better place than the conference that was
Very
due to
clever.
take place on the 13th of January, 1987.
I didn't get
It was
paid,
3
though.
years after the fire at Ole's hardware store, and the California Conference of Arson Investigators was gearing up for its annual 2-day seminar in the city of Fresno, California, about 4 hours drive north from LA. It's a conference that's about as exciting as it sounds, and its 242 attendees were expecting the usual. No one could have predicted the chaos that was about to unfold.
Oh, Holiday Inn.
Starting on the first day of the conference, a string of fires would break out along a 100-mile stretch of California's Highway 99 over a period of 3 days. Starting at the conference in Fresno, running all the way back down to a city called Bakersfield. At first, the fires were small. In Fresno, a sleeping bag display was set on fire in a drugstore. Within an hour, another fire was set in a bin of foam pillows in a fabric store. And then less than 48 hours later, on Thursday the 15th of January,
Across the
another fabric
street?
store went up in Fresno. And this time, the fire was big. It caused $300,000 worth of damage and created a blast that blew out all of the store's windows. Once again, it was a miracle that nobody was hurt, or worse. Scott Baker, an arson investigator with the Californian State Fire Marshal, arrived on the scene that day. Oh, he knew it was arson, all right, but this many arsons in a city that was holding an arson investigators conference? Some things are just beyond coincidence, and alarm bells were going off. The very next morning, Friday the 16th of January,
It's a
40
fucking
miles
cop.
south from Fresno, another fire erupted in a surplus store in a city called
Gotta be
Tulare.
at that. I mean,
Again,
it's
in a
it's gotta be a
sleeping bag
cop
display,
or
and then 45
literally one of the
minutes later,
investigators
on
of the
other side of the
arsons.
city, there was another fire, this time in a bin full
Like,
of
it's
foam
literally
pillows
gonna
at a
be the
discount
other,
store.
not Doug, but the
arsonist
other
wasn't
guy.
done yet.
Definitely.
A few hours later, an hour south down the highway from Tulare,
Definitely.
2 more fires broke out in a city called Bakersfield. The first in a craft store, and the second in a fabric store, both in, you guessed it, a display bin full of synthetic materials.
Hancock.
Only this time, the arsonist messed up. Because called to the scene of the first fire in Bakersfield, the one at the craft store, was an arson investigator called Marvin Casey, and no prizes for guessing what he was about to find. Now, the fire in the craft store hadn't been that bad. The manager
Damn,
had
Rice
noticed it
shot
right
twice in a
away
row. That's
and put it
crazy.
out with a fire extinguisher. This left a white powdery residue at the fire's point of origin, which Marvin noticed straight away.
Badge?
It was
No, it's a
wooden
fingerprint.
bin
They already
that
found
was
it.
at one point full of decorative synthetic
Marvin
flowers.
is kind of a good name. Damn.
Marvin poked his head inside. And right there at the
Marvin.
bottom, he saw something. A delayed incendiary device.
My name's Marvin.
The delayed incendiary device. And right next to it, a small piece of yellow-lined notepaper.
Uh-oh, you silly
bitch. He carefully
bitch.
picked both up and put them in an evidence bag. Later that day, Marvin received a call from Scott Baker, the arson investigator up in Fresno.
Gotta be
and
him.
It was here, finally, that the dots started to connect. The same incendiary device, right down to the brand of cigarette and the number of matches, was found in one of Scott's Fresno fires. And the witness descriptions, though fairly vague, were all similar. A dark-haired man of average height and average build, acting suspiciously just before the fires had broken out. If this arsonist wanted attention, he was about to get it. Now, if you're an arsonist and you're gonna mess up, Marvin Casey, or Marv as he's called by those who know him, is probably one of the worst people to mess up around. Don't let his thick southern accent and congenial Texan charm fool you. Marv is as incisive as they come. In one book, he's described as a man with the squint of a frontier lawman in his eye, which may be a little theatrical. But Marv is a pretty theatrical guy. Because the morning after his call with Scott, Marv got
They would call that mewing in modern
time. He sat at his desk, and he got to thinking. And then he invited Scott to his office. 20 years of experience as an arson investigator, leading him up to this point. When Scott finally arrived, Marv broke it down to him like this. The fires in Fresno took place the day before the arson conference and shortly after it had finished. Then the guy travels back from Fresno, down Highway 99 back to his home, probably somewhere in LA, setting fires as he goes.
Interesting.
And the devices, the methods used, this guy knew what he was doing. He knew which materials to choose, he knew how to set up the device just so. What if, Marv said to Scott, this was one of the arson investigators? Now, Scott didn't immediately shoot him down, but if they were in the realm of what ifs, then wasn't it worth asking the obvious? What if this was all just a weird coincidence? Maybe. But at this point, Marv
gotta be Scott. No, man, there's no way.
So he sent the evidence, the small piece of paper,
probably
to a lab,
somebody else, man.
For a fingerprint.
Just
and
a
while he was
quinky
waiting
dink.
for the results, he got the conference roster. 242 attendees. And he narrowed down that list by looking at who would have been driving south down Highway 99 back to LA.
No way, what a freak. Did you just hear that?
Checked south to 2 attendees.
He narrowed down the list
by looking at who would have been driving south down Highway 99 back to LA.
That's
or not they
crazy.
had left on their own, what time they checked out. He made a lot of calls, pissed a lot of people off.
Dude, what a baller.
He had his list. 55 arson investigators.
Marv is nuts.
55 suspects. And then he got the call. On that small scrap of yellow paper, they'd found a fingerprint. And it wasn't a match to anyone in the criminal database. Whoever left that print didn't have a criminal record. Now this was in line with Marv's theory, so he immediately called the higher-ups, the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives. But to describe the special agent on the other end
Explosives
of the phone
just doesn't get a part of the acronym, by the way. Kind of fucked up.
Pulling the prints of 55 arson investigators.
They cover 4 things and then they only use 3 letters. Like explosions just don't get an E in the acronym. It's just fuck it. And explosives. Why not? You can't be here though. You can't be next to us. I mean, ATF does sound cool, but like ATFE wouldn't have sounded much different. That's all I'm saying.
Would mean going to each of their respective fire units and pulling their physical fingerprint cards. And anyway, he said, the evidence just doesn't warrant that. So thanks for the theory, but no thanks, and good luck with it all.
Evidence doesn't
warrant it. I couldn't get
it.
anyone to believe me, Marv remembered. Because they didn't want to believe me.
Yeah, well, common problem. That
Needless
blue
to
shield.
Say, Marv was bitterly disappointed.
Very common for enforcement to think all of them are innocent and
many of his fellow
incapable of
investigators
crime.
shunned him. He knew that he couldn't take it further. At least, not right now. Not without losing his job. He would just have to wait until the arsonist struck again. That wait would be a long one. 2 years, to be precise.
Taps? Where are you guys getting other letters?
Our lone
Explosives.
arsonist is not a very good decision maker.
Is an E.
And he just can't help himself. This time, the arson investigators conference was in Pacific Grove, a city on the coast, about
arson,
5 hours drive north
firearms,
of Los Angeles.
and explosives.
It's the same pattern. fires along the highway leading south from the conference, all in foam padding or pillows, many of them with the trademark device. Just like the Fresno Bakersfield
Why are we making
fires,
up letters?
just like the coin tosser.
This illustrations,
and those devices
these illustrations
were
are
wrapped in the
so
same
good,
yellow
bro.
notebook paper as the ones found at the first arson investigators conference. Of course, it didn't take long for Marv to hear about this, and by the end of March 1989, he'd cross-referenced that conference list with the old one, using the same criteria.
Uh-oh.
And now he didn't have 55 names. He had 10.
Ooh,
Perhaps
get
unsurprisingly,
him, Marv.
the higher-ups at the ATF were now much more willing to pull the prints from the arson investigators' various fire units.
Get him, Marvin.
This was it. Marv had him. It was over. Or at least it should have been. There was just one small problem.
Anyway, I'm sorry, Marv.
It was him.
It's not a match for anyone on the list.
This just didn't make sense.
Why does that
to
sound like
Marv.
Vinny?
He was.
For anyone on the list.
This
sound
just
like Vinny.
didn't
What the
make
hell?
sense to Marv. He was so sure that he was right. But if the fingerprints weren't a match to any of the arson investigators on the list, then that was that.
Oh, my
And when
stomach
he really
hurts,
thought
Chad. I
about
kind of gotta.
It did kind of sound
gotta
like some ridiculous
pee.
HBO film starring Ray Liotta. Now you're probably thinking, what about the other ATF agent? And what about all the other devices
Feds
that were
are on
found?
it?
And they're good questions. But you see, at the time, Marv hadn't known about the devices found by any of the other arson investigators. The Frito Bandito, the coin tosser. Like I said before, departmental communication just wasn't happening in the way that it should. If it had,
Still doesn't.
things
Go
may have been
piss.
different.
Okay, fine. Be right back. Everybody spam Joel emotes while I'm gone. Who up farting?
But here's the thing you need to know about Marv.
I am.
He's stubborn. And deep down, he knew he was right.
Me? No.
There were just too many coincidences. But what was he going to do? Start accusing a fingerprint expert of getting it all
Amy.
wrong? They'd just laugh him out the door. A small city arson investigator, a country bumpkin, with his crazy conspiracy theories that
Come on,
didn't
Marv!
even have evidence. He knew what they were saying about him behind closed
fuck
doors.
you.
He was a joke to them.
Yeah, Marv's a
But he
dick.
knew something else,
Yeah, fuck
too.
Marv.
This guy,
What kind of a name is
whoever he
Marvin?
wasn't going to stop. Marv knew arsonists, and he knew arson
It
investigators.
was the fingerprint guy
This
and the
guy
phone
had messed
guy.
up before.
Phone
He
guy.
would mess up again. And once more, Marv was just going to have to wait.
Sorry.
And he wouldn't have to wait very long. Because this arsonist's fires were messages. And once again, that message was loud and clear. Clearly, none of you are smart enough to stop me. So, I guess I'll just burn it all.
Good lord, that's scary.
Between December 1990 and March 1991, the Los Angeles area was hit with a number of arsons,
I'm
the
getting
likes of which it
nervous.
had never seen before. The arsonist was back, and he was trying to burn LA to the ground. Store after store after store. These weren't small fires either. Entire department stores were being burned to the ground at peak shopping periods. Some of these stores were filled with hundreds of customers who barely escaped with their lives. Some of them contained large toy sections that kids were browsing with their parents. Again, how nobody died during these attacks is a complete mystery. These fires caused
Maybe that
millions
wasn't the
of dollars
goal.
worth of damage.
They said he
was
did
a
it during
disaster.
opening hours,
People
right?
were getting paranoid.
Or closing
Any
hours,
abandoned
like the
shopping
least
bag
populated
or package
times.
would prompt a call to emergency services. The bigger retail establishments even started hiring extra security. These fires were strategic and malicious. Fires and then
did
distraction
they say
fires,
peak hours?
always the
Sorry, I must
same
have missed that
MO.
part.
The point of origin
My
always
fault.
in a display rack
React
of
streamer, not paying
synthetic
attention.
materials, usually cushions or pillows of some type. And then the delayed incendiary device started popping back up again. It was out of control. Towards the end of this spree, the arsonist had started 5 fires within a 2-hour period in one small
Squeaky
area.
ass mic arm again.
And if you're exasperated right
How
now,
far into the video are we?
don't worry. Do you remember how I
Almost
said that
halfway.
communication between departments just wasn't that great back then?
God, I wonder
Well, it turns
if
out
somebody
if
was-
you burn enough buildings to the ground, that'll change. I guess it should come as no surprise to anyone that while setting fires near an arson investigators conference will certainly get you some attention, going on a full-on GTA-style timed rampage mission in central Los Angeles is going to get you the full 5 stars. So welcome
Kinda
back
like
again
James
to the
Bond,
ATF, the Bureau
like-
of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, the big guns, the folks that
Kinda
investigate
James
at the
Bond
city and
ass,
state
like,
level with the big fires.
deep in
especially
the
if it
enemy
entails
territory
arson for
ass
profit
music
or
is this.
organised crime. Their focus is on the multi-jurisdictional stuff, and they're brought in when special agents needed to work a big case. Oh boy, were they needed. In early 1991, in response to these fires, a new task force was created, and with that, the coin tosser received his final name, the Pillow Pyro. Now, to be fair, the Pillow Pyro Task Force, as they were known, hadn't connected the most recent fires with any of the other fires that I've mentioned, but they will. Now,
Why does he
this
have
was
three
a
different
fairly small task
names?
force, known internally as the Three Amigos.
Frito
And these
Bandito
guys
was
are
pretty
important to the
solid.
story, so let's get to know them quickly. First up, you've got Glenn Lucero, non-veteran, firefighter.
Frito Bandito
and
is a
now
pretty hard ass
detective.
name.
And
I
then
mean, they
you've got
really
Ken
didn't have to
Pope,
go much
a young
from there.
rookie cop who had a bit of a rep as a party animal, but
No
would later use that to
communication,
go
fair.
undercover and take down a biker gang. And finally,
Way to
April
go,
Carroll,
kid.
a young and ambitious graduate with a reputation for walking and thinking quicker than most could keep up with. Then there was the Amigos supervisor, Mike Matassa. Just before taking on the Pillow Pyro case, he'd been promoted to supervisor due to his success rate, but deep down, he wasn't in love with the
wire is
admin.
going on here.
He was an LAPD street cop at heart, and he looked like he had the scar to prove it.
Keep the
but it was actually just
devil
from
way
falling out of the crib as a
down in the
baby, a fact which he
hole.
shared with his colleagues on more than one occasion. Anyway, he was a
Gotta
really
finish
good
watching
detective,
The Wire.
and he was
never watched it
itching
fully.
for a case like this.
I think I got to season
Safe to
3.
say, with an entire task force dedicated to hunting him down, the Pillow Pyro's days were numbered. There was no more hiding. It was time to find out who this monster really was.
Yeah, name them something
With the fires
crazy
becoming
dumb, like
more frequent
stupid
and
idiot
more
killer.
aggressive, Matassa and the Three Amigos knew that time
Well, that
wasn't
makes the
on their
victims
side.
sound like they're the
So the
stupid
task
idiots.
force
Maybe
came
not
up with a
that.
plan. They'd seen the pattern in those LA fires.
Stupid idiot who
They
kills
had to
people
start
killer.
connecting the dots, and fast. They began spreading the word, and in March 1991, a Pillow Pyro bulletin was presented by an LAFD investigator
investigating
at a
Tiny
fire
Dick
investigators
Dan.
regional strike team meeting. This was a group formed by the small foothill cities of the northern LA metropolitan area, mostly attended by any city that didn't have its own big arson investigation unit. That day, the investigator presented the Pillow Pyro's MO, outlined examples of fires, advised on what to
Oh my
do
God,
and what
police
to be on the
districts
lookout
are
for,
communicating.
and
This
then
is
handed out
crazy.
a flyer detailing the signature device
And then
to
they
a room
never did it
full of arson
again.
investigators. Now, most attendees sat there and listened dutifully, another day, another meeting, but as soon as those flyers were handed out, one of those attendees felt his blood run cold. It was Scott Baker, arson investigator from the California State Fire Marshal.
Uh-oh.
He'd seen that device before. 4 years ago in Fresno, he and Marv had discussed it to death. And now, here it was, on a piece of paper,
Scott.
right in front of him. He wanted to speak up there and then, but he had to stop himself. It hadn't exactly been the most well-received theory back then, and if Marv was right, Scott may be sitting in a room with the arsonist right now. So he waited, and then when the meeting was done, he had a quiet word with the LAFD investigator. He told him that he needed to tell him something really important. Not here though, he said.
The chairs are
Meet me
listening.
outside in the middle of the parking lot. This spooked the investigator, who probably thought it was all a bit dramatic, but he obliged. And there,
Throws
in the
cigarette
middle
with
of the
3
parking
matches
lot,
at the investigator.
Scott shared the theory. He told him everything. And then he dropped a bomb. We didn't just find the same devices that you did. We found something even better. A fingerprint. I'm sure you can imagine the look on Marv's face when the
Ooh, a
Three Amigos from the
sandwich.
Pillow Pyro task force came strolling
you.
through his office door. He pulled out
W,
all
lady.
of his intel. One of the Amigos, Glenn Lucero,
Love you,
remembered
thank
listening
you.
politely as Marv began regaling his theory in careful and elaborate detail.
All the Three
At the time,
Amigos are
Glenn
listening
remembered
to
thinking
Marv's
that,
theory.
quote,
Let's
it was
go.
interesting, but that Marv had already worked it to death. True, and perhaps more importantly, as they would find out, when it came to that all-important fingerprint, there wasn't actually a match. In contrast to Marv, the Amigos were decidedly unexcited about this theory. Still, they took the evidence back with them and half-heartedly trotted out the theory to Mike Matassa. They explained that, yes, there was a fingerprint, but there were no matches. And Matassa, cautiously optimistic, just said,
I'm muted because I'm crinkling a lot of paper, sorry.
let's run it again.
Run it back! Bro said
And just
we're
like
running
that,
it back.
the fingerprint was being run through a much more enhanced process, using newer techniques that were more reliable. They now had access to a computer, for example, that scanned the print
this
and
beautiful
gave it a score.
sandwich.
And that computer could scan not only arson investigator fingerprints, but all the fingerprints of all the country's law enforcement officers and anyone who'd ever applied for a law enforcement job, such as a fire investigator who had applied and failed to get into the LAPD 20 years earlier, for example. And I'm sure you can probably guess what happened next. The computer found a match. There it was, clear as day. April remembers having to sit down as she was
I
told.
have the results here for the 1987 Bakersfield fire. Listen, we have a really weird result here. You ought to tell your arson investigators to keep their mitts off the evidence. It
Why
was
does this
touched by
sound like
John
Vinny?
Leonard Orr, left ring finger. Isn't he an arson investigator up in Glendale?
John
What the hell is
Leonard
this guy doing up in
Orr,
Bakersfield?
the well-respected arson investigator
told
from
you.
Glendale that you'd met at the beginning.
I told you.
The man who had first come up with the theory of the lone arsonist. The man who had convinced his police partners to chase the arsonist all over town.
Just wait. Are you serious? There's another twist?
The man who had been so insistent that the fire at Ole's was arson. Nobody could believe what they were hearing.
What?
There had to be some kind
Why
of
would he
explanation. John
why would he
Orr,
put the
of
police on
all
himself?
People. He was a leader in his field. Everyone knew about his success rate in finding
What, he
the
get a
point of
boner
origin.
about it?
At the time, they were all thinking that there had to be a mistake. Maybe the computer got it wrong.
It's gotta be an
they spoke to
arsonist,
Marv
guys. We
when
should
they
look
asked
for him.
Is there any way that anyone other than you could have touched that paper in a professional capacity? To which Marv answered unequivocally, no. It was exactly as they had expected. Why would John be an investigator at a Bakersfield fire 2 hours from his jurisdiction in Glendale? Right there and then, all
Gotta be
doubts
two
went out the
arsonists
window.
then.
Of course, on the other end of the line, Marv suspected that they'd found something. They told him that they had, but they couldn't tell him, and he was pretty mad about it.
What if he found the arsonist and confronted him and then got recruited to do it
Eventually,
with him?
the amigos caved and told him. Shivers went down his spine. John had trained him. Glenn Lucero, one third of the amigos, felt the same way. At one point, Glenn had been neighbours with John and had been invited to his Christmas parties. As a fellow firefighter, he'd also gone to many of his arson talks. He'd read the papers that John had written. They were really good. Now, you might imagine that this would be a smoking gun. There would be no way that John would be able to explain this, and so he would immediately be arrested and charged. But that isn't quite how it worked. Remember, the Pillow Pyro Task Force only knew about the most recent LA fires, and now the string of fires at the 1987 arson conference. They didn't know about anything else. But of course, they knew there would be more. They now had to start looking at every other suspicious fire, which meant that they had to start digging through other departments' files, only alerting those who absolutely had to know, certainly not John. They didn't know it then, but they were looking down the barrel of more fires than they could have ever possibly anticipated. This case was about to go deep.
Bro's a freak.
Because the coin tosser fires, the Frito Bandito fires, Ole's hardware store were all John.
I can't believe they have a DNA match and it's going to go
With the depth and
deeper.
complexity of this case, they needed time. Better still, with the notorious difficulty in compiling solid evidence in cases of arson is a prosecuting attorney's nightmare, they ideally needed to catch him in the act. So more people would have to be brought onto the task force. And on top of
It is a
that,
nightmare,
they needed to start
'cause you need to
tracking him.
get
So
somebody
they applied
caught.
for a court order to stick an electronic tracking device to...
It's what they're alluding to. Prosecution has a hard time with arson cases because, like, arson is done in typically populated areas, so DNA evidence can be seen on the scene that don't necessarily imply that person, like, that shouldn't necessarily implicate somebody. And then also evidence can be burned or misleading, and you can't really, like, be like, you started those fires. No, we didn't know you were, we don't have you there. You know what I mean? Like, you do have to really, it was a fingerprint, not DNA. That's the same thing. Fingerprints are DNA. Sorry you had to find out this way.
To the bottom of his car, and when they were granted one a few weeks later, they began planning for a stakeout. And their timing
Fingerprints are
couldn't have been better,
pseudoscience.
because in a few days...
Is that sarcasm? Please say that's a joke. I'm assuming that's a joke.
N?
Would a fly just fly past me? Fingerprint is pseudoscience compared to DNA. What? Fingerprints are DNA. What? Unless you're a twin, you most likely have a unique fingerprint in terms of pattern, like whorls and stuff like that. And when you touch something, if you really press on something, you leave a very distinct fingerprint pattern. I'm struggling to take this in any way. There was a person who had a near identical match. Okay, near identical. A police district taking a partial print and condemning somebody for that as a match is not evidence that fingerprints aren't DNA or good evidence. That sounds like a fumble within the district that accused that person. A partial print isn't conclusive evidence. Like, they found an exact match from what this video is implying. DNA is different. All right, guys. So check this out. If somebody were to pluck my hair, if somebody were to pluck my hair follicle and scan it, within the hair follicle will be my genetic coding and my DNA. That's DNA evidence. That is how they can match my DNA if they were to swab me with a hair follicle. Like when when the Doomsday Mom was accused of killing her 2 children, they found one singular blonde hair follicle on one of the duct tapes that they put on one of their children. One hair follicle. All they had to do was swab her saliva and they found a match, an exact match. I'm not saying fingerprints are extremely reliable, but when a fingerprint is extremely readable, as if it's like directly pressed down, that is a very distinguishable identifier. It's not 100% because there's a lot of factors in somebody touching stuff. Hardness, angle, like the surface, their finger, like did they have... When you touch anything, you leave behind DNA. Like it's literally a theory. Like there's an entire theory of people who we transfer DNA by everything. We touch everything. Anything we do transfers DNA. Like, I am not saying that like genetic DNA testing is the same as a fingerprint scan. I did not say that. Fingerprint DNA is a completely different thing, but it's still DNA. Just because it's not reliable doesn't make it pseudoscience. the terminology you're using to refer to an inconsistent thing, eyewitness testimonies are not reliable. They're very biased or just incorrect. That doesn't make it pseudoscience. That just makes it unreliable evidence. It's not determinate evidence. It's not substantial. Genetic DNA testing can be substantial. That I agree. Fingerprint match isn't substantial, but it's not pseudoscience. Everybody has a unique fingerprint. The likelihood of you getting an exact full-on print, not super likely. Like, unless you straight up plan to. But like, fake science is different than unreliable evidence. Like, does that make sense? I do get what you're saying, because technically a fingerprint does not conclude what testing somebody's DNA within them, within their body, within their physiology would. But they don't go they shouldn't. They shouldn't go off of a case strictly from a fingerprint. The likely scenario here is they will bring this guy in. Well, I don't know, because it's the 80s. Nowadays, they would bring somebody in if their fingerprint matched. Like if this was a criminal and they were in the criminal database, when you get arrested, you have to submit your fingerprint. And then you're in the criminal database. Like your DNA, your fingerprint, everything. You get put in the criminal database. If they find evidence of DNA, like a hair follicle, like skin, like a fingerprint, they'll scan it and see if the criminal database gives a match. And then they'll bring that person in and then continue the testing. It's not like they see the fingerprint and go, that's the guy. Like, get him. It's evidence to build off of. That's the whole point of eyewitness testimonies too. Unfortunately, people within like court cases, like prosecution, use eyewitness testimonies to bolster their argument, despite eyewitness testimonies being inconsistent a lot of the time. That's a totally different problem. But I hope that makes sense. I mean, I see what you're saying, but like, this is an argument of like terminology, when at the end of the day, it's not pseudoscience. You shouldn't say pseudoscience unless something is totally like there's no foundation on its value. Like the ability to detect lying, pseudoscience. There's not a consistent way to like see a lie, like without prior information or posthumous information, like a certain true crime channel that we've discussed before. Like, you can't see body language or demeanor or tone, etc., and be like, that's a lie. There's not a consistent pattern in which that is a proven fact, because people are so unique and different in their mannerisms and their personality and their delivery and their body language, that somebody could be extremely nervous or extremely off-putting body language wise, but be telling the truth. But they don't know, they might not act that same way as somebody else would in that situation. I'm not going to act the same thing if I get pulled over by a police officer that you might act as. Like, that, something like that is pseudoscience. It's all good, dude. You're not, like, I'm not mad at you. It's just, it's a good discussion, because like stuff like that, like, even though it's like awkward, it creates a cool conversation, because you get to clarify, I get to use my degree, we get to have a decent conversation that isn't rude. At least I hope I wasn't. Like, I think both of us exaggerated in quite some way, so it's totally fine. I think you used the wrong word, and I took that as is, and that's on me. And then I think that, like, I also was taking fingerprint as, like, DNA, when technically you're right. It's not DNA in the sense that you're speaking of. So it's totally fine, man. I think it's good. It's fun. It's fun to discuss. I think that's my favorite part about being able to use my degree is discussing about it, because it's like, this is useful stuff. Maybe not the transferring of DNA, but like there's a lot of very interesting stuff that comes up within the criminology and criminal justice system that isn't given to people within their education. That would be very useful for people to know, like in terms of civil rights and you know, their rights to an attorney, stuff like that. But anyway, this is very interesting. I don't know what's going to happen here, because we're halfway done, and they've found a fingerprint on the scene of a crime and have connected it to the same guy. So I have no idea how this is going to blow out for 40 more minutes, but we're going to find out, I guess.
John would be attending another arson investigators conference.
You're going into criminology because of me? That's so nuts, dude.
One of them
I can't believe people go to criminology stuff because of listening to me.
Very strange.
That is such a wild
they were about to
thing,
play.
man. What made me want to study criminology? Stuff like this, man. It's just fun to talk about. Like, I could sit here for days and just discuss the psychology of serial killing, or like fingerprints, or just evidence in general, like forensics in general is really cool. Like stuff like this, like the investigative process, stuff like this. It's, despite it being a corrupt system, the processes in which crime is solved and discussed and like concluded is fascinating. The process in which a crime is committed is fascinating. You have to go through a lot of mental hurdles to decide to commit a crime and actually do it. The thought of doing one is way different than the actual process of setting up and doing it. If you planned it out to that degree, even not planning it out and doing it to that degree takes a lot of mental gymnastics. And it's fascinating to discuss why people come to those conclusions. And it's interesting, especially on the serial killing side of things, to hear them discuss their rationale, because it is such a cold and obscure difference of humanity. Because it's like they're such a different attitude about like the people around them, and the lack of empathy within them is so chilling. But it's hard to not listen to it, because it's like, how the fuck does that happen? You know what I mean? It's wild. And that's what interests me the most, because I love psychology and I love criminology, and it's interesting to like, there's such a helpful marriage between the two in terms of the investigative process, and it's really cool to like break it apart into pieces personally. That's why.
Starting on Saturday, the 27th of April, 1991, the Amigos,
did I want to pursue a career?
And a newly expanded
had streaming not worked out as I was graduating college, yeah. I was getting a master's degree when I went to stream full time.
Was due to start on Monday.
I was in a master's program for like 2 months.
And John was due to make the 3-hour drive north on Sunday. So the team dutifully parked themselves just out of sight and waited. Just as they expected, John left his home that Sunday morning right on time. And a few hours later, the real stakeout began. Of course, nighttime arrived.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of job I would have done, but I would have loved to do one.
John's car. What started as
honestly, like, I think being an investigator is very cool. The problem is that requires being a cop. So, like, if we're talking like ideally, being a PI would have been awesome. I mean, that's a very specific and very hard to like get successful job, but the investigative process is a very interesting and fascinating thing to me. And being able to dig deep into a problem or a question in terms of crime is very cool. And it would have been very cool to be able to like do that. I think if I really like being like a homicide detective would have been wild. Stuff like that is like fascinating. I mean, it's not, you know, fireworks and shit like CSI Miami and all the shows that show it. But like, I even applied to the FBI. Don't be mad at me. I applied to the FBI at one point when I was still going through college because I loved the idea of being on the behavioral analysis unit, which is a tall ladder to climb. But obviously it didn't happen. I didn't even get a call back, but I can understand the appeal of certain jobs within like law enforcement. The overall culture, education, and lack of training within it is unacceptable, and it's created a long list of cops who are just not good at their job and are terrible to the environment around them. But stuff like a homicide investigator, like the DEA, like the BAU, jobs like that where you really dig deep into like the psychosis and process of a criminal, I understand that fascination. That's a really, really cool job to me. Now, I'm glad I never had to go into that. But if it was like ideal, like I would love to be an investigator somehow without having to be a regular cop for super long. You know how like I don't know, this show's kind of old, but have you guys ever watched Psych? Psych's a early 2000s show. Such a good show, dude. I can't recommend Psych enough. It's such a fucking awesome show. It's a dude who's like observant, and he fakes being a psychic to help solve crime, but he's not actually a cop. He's just a liaison to the police department, and they think he's a psychic. Really cool show. Such an awesome show. I used to lose sleep in high school watching that show at night. Something like that would have been really awesome to me. Obviously I don't think that's in any way a possibility in real life, but like if we're talking like ideal job, it would be to be like an investigative liaison. That way I don't have to do all the cop shit, but I can still help with the stuff that I find fascinating. Would I be a criminal prosecutor to skip to get to investigator? I suppose I could have taken that route. I didn't go to law school though. I didn't shoot for law school. I didn't think my grades would be good enough. And I don't think they were. But that is a possibility. That is true. I mean, I guess if stuff doesn't go well, I could always go back. Could always go to law school, but the worst part of law school is the 75% chance of being depressed when you're done, and then you don't even get a guaranteed law degree because you have to pass the bar, and that doesn't even give you a guaranteed job. Which is, I mean, there's a whole law school has a whole process of like, fuck you, you might not make it like 4 times over. But yeah,
as a relatively exciting and adrenaline-pumping task quickly turned into a mind-numbingly boring one. It was hot, and the surveillance van was stifling. Everybody was desperate for something, anything to happen. And then just like that, it did. On Monday the 29th of April, 1991, after that day's talks were over, the task force watched as John walked inside a drugstore and walked back out again a few minutes later. They held their positions, waiting for signs of a fire. But there was nothing. So they sent someone in to see what John had purchased, and the person at the counter handed them a receipt. That receipt was for a pack of Marlboro cigarettes, and John was a non-smoker. It seemed like he was gearing up for the big event, which of course put everybody on high alert, and that was just as well because a few days later, May 3rd, John left the conference for a lunch break. He got in his car, drove around for a little while, and then, They all
I've only
watched
had
on
a
in
few
horror
cigarettes in my
as he
lifetime in drunk
seemingly out
antics,
of
but
nowhere
Marlboros are
pulled
fucking
over,
disgusting.
got out of his car, bent down, and looked straight at the tracking device. The task force were convinced that their cover was blown, but then something even stranger happened. John got back in his car and he booked it. He drove like a bat out of hell, and the task force had no choice but to tail him. They followed him all the way to a police station and watched as he went inside and then ran back out, only to shoot off again in some other direction. The amigos remember running inside and flashing their badges and demanding to know what happened. The lieutenant in the station explained that John had thought he had an explosive device and he was on his way to a specialist to get it looked at. The team couldn't believe it. They had to call this explosives expert and tell them, whoever they were going to have to lie and do it convincingly, else the whole case could be blown. And so the explosives expert does his best. He tells John, it's a prank, a dud explosive, and John seemingly buys it. So the task force was still good for now, but John's strange behaviour did leave them with a few questions.
Yeah, why would you
John
go,
really did
this looks like an
believe that was
explosive on my
explosives
car,
device.
let me drive
Why
that
was he
car?
driving like a maniac with it still attached to the car? And if that's what he really thought, then why did he even get back in the car in the first place? This, coupled with the fact that John failed to set any fires over the next few days, made the team wonder if John was in fact onto them. And still, they were left with no choice. The DA had been clear. They needed more than circumstantial evidence. They needed to catch John in the act. So they followed John back home, attached another tracking device to his car, this time smaller, and waited for something big to happen. They needed John to set a fire. Short of a confession, it was the only thing that was going to work. Of course, at this point, a confession would be nice, but it's not like John was going to write a whole bunch of his crimes in a book and then try to get that book published. I mean, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous, perhaps.
What?
But no one is exempt from John's poor decision-making skills. Not even John himself.
No fucking way,
It was
bro.
about a month later when the amigos received a frantic call from John Orr's boss. He had something big. Because John had just handed him a rough copy of a novel he'd been working on, called Points of Origin. And that novel bore some striking similarities to the crimes they were investigating.
What the fuck?
The amigos simply could not believe what they were reading. Just listen to this book's accompanying cover letter, which was written, funnily enough, on the same day they got John's fingerprint results. April 17th, 1991. Common criminals seem to have one characteristic they all share: the need to distance themselves from their crimes as quickly as possible. All criminals, that is, except the arsonist.
Except
the arsonists
me.
stay close by and sometimes even participate in the discovery and eventual extinguishment of their fires.
That's true. A lot of them try to help dissipate the fire.
Is a fact-based work that follows the pattern of an actual arsonist who had been setting serial fires in California over the past 8 years. He has not been identified or apprehended.
O.J. Simpson took his whole swagger, dude.
As in the real case, the
arsonist in my novel is a firefighter. And he's the only one that knew that, because we didn't at that point.
He stole his whole MO.
Just look at Matassa's face. Needless to say, the task force felt like they had won the lottery. The significance of this book and this specific letter simply cannot be overstated. And, you know, a word of warning for anyone out there who's trying to do bad things and get away with them. Maybe don't write about yourself committing any crimes in a book. And especially don't try and get that book published. Feel like those
At least wait until you're not guilty like OJ did.
Getting away with anything. But
I gotta pee. 1 sec. Alrighty. This is ridiculous.
But needless to say, those days were long gone. The entire cover letter and concept of the book was so fundamentally damning for a very simple reason. Even if John had some kind of inkling that a firefighter was responsible for the fires in his area, the city of Glendale, and even if he knew about some kind of ATF investigation into a serial arsonist, he shouldn't have known that this investigation went beyond Los Angeles, or that a firefighter, which all arson investigators are by the way, was at the centre of it. The ATF had only just found out themselves. Marv didn't even know it. It was written on the day that the results came back from the fingerprint analysis. Oh, and this was just the start. The book John had written was a goldmine. After all, it's not every day that the criminal you're chasing writes his own fanfic, but today was that day.
Fanfic is crazy.
Jokes aside, it's actually truly egregious that John thought he could do something like this and get away with it. It speaks volumes as to who John really is. The arrogance is actually pretty astounding. This was something that became apparent when the task force began to work their way through the chapters, poring over every page, reading in vivid detail about Aaron Stiles.
I mean, he literally just gave the prosecuting attorney evidence.
The firefighter turned arsonist. Aaron was a loner and insecure, getting little attention in his day-to-day life. His fires gave the much-needed attention he craved, providing him with feelings of importance and recognition. He was, after all, the only one who knew how the fire started. And didn't that make him a very important person? Hated it when he wasn't properly recognized. Aaron was so furious that he set a nearly identical fire 2 days later at another hardware store. Aaron reached into his pocket and found a handful of coins. He tossed the device out the window, watching an alley lined with apartment buildings. Each 2-story building had carports off the alley. This fire would start off his day. Aaron headed to the annual Arson Investigators Conference. He walked towards the nearby fabric store. He was scared, but the fear excited him. He slipped in the front door and found piles of pillow stuffing pieces of foam in various sizes. No one paid any attention to him. He looked into the store and could see the displays igniting as the fire built to fill the entire storefront.
I'm so confused. Where's the sexual tension?
His body was found with Terence's clinging to her ankles. He rationalized the deaths as he did everything. It wasn't his fault. The people,
when are the sex scenes? I'm
just
confused.
Acted stupidly, and their deaths had nothing to do with the fact that he set
Do you
the fire.
think he kicked his feet riding this?
It was too bad about the
Ooh,
baby.
I'm so bad.
Shit, it wasn't my fault.
They're gonna be so mad. And then he fucked the fire.
It was exactly as they suspected. The Frito Bandito, the coin tosser, the pillowcase pyro. They were all Aaron. And Aaron was clearly John. And while this book obviously showed that John knew things about both the arson fires and their subsequent investigation that he simply should not have known, there was more to it.
Still a good 20 minutes to this.
The other main character
I'm not
in this
convinced
book,
this is it.
Phil Langtry, the hero of the story, the arson investigator that would eventually solve the puzzle and catch Aaron, the arsonist, also seemed to be John. To really understand this, though, we need to look at John's background. So let's go over what the task force would have known about John while they were reading Points of Origin. John was born in 1949 into an ordinary middle-class family. There was no real evidence that John had any real issues until he joined the workforce. He'd started out in the Air Force but was honorably discharged by the time he was 22. This was when John had decided that more than anything, he wanted to be a cop. In 1971, he began applying to the LAPD and the LASD, and he passed everything but the psychological exam,
where the assessing psychiatrist would deem him
unsuitable due to his emotionally unstable, overly passive personality, which showed serious signs of problems with authority. Sam began applying to the LAPD and the LASD.
Is that just everything? Okay, that's just like a show. I was like, what the fuck?
Where the assessing psychiatrist would deem him unsuitable due to his emotionally unstable, overly passive personality, which showed serious signs of problems with authority. Not accepting this assessment, John went and hired his own psychiatrist who said he was, quote, just fine. But funnily enough, this wasn't accepted by the LAPD, and a few years later,
denied by the cops.
In 1973, he applied for the Los Angeles Fire Department.
Ed Kemper got denied by the cops because he was too.
He failed both the physical and written exam.
I mean, he was like
Finally,
6'8",
in 1974, he managed to get a job at the Glendale Fire Department.
He's like almost 7 feet tall.
Mostly because there were hardly any applicants, and the job was the worst paid of its kind in the country. But John found
back then they were like, you're too, your weight and height is too much.
He began working as a security guard at a 7-Eleven and then at a Sears department store, where he caught 30 people in the first month, telling everyone who would listen that he had a, quote, cop's sixth sense. John, of course, was not a cop, something he was painfully reminded of in his pursuit.
John was not a cop. He was an arson. He was the lead arson investigator.
Him when he attempted to chase them down. On more than one occasion, a real cop would have to get involved, which irritated John to no end. It was at this time that he got a concealed weapon permit and began hanging out at cop bars where he earned himself a reputation.
Oh my god, he's literally Ed Kemper.
Firefighters liked him just fine, but the cops, they thought he was a joke.
Except the cops at the bar Ed Kemper hung out with liked Ed Kemper.
Bad guys, and
they hated that he couldn't be a cop because of his physiology.
It was his first taste of being a real hero. For a man who had thus far failed at the majority of first bad guys, and they thought he was a joke. He was constantly cruising around trying to catch the bad guys, and once he even ended up in a local paper for catching a burglar. It was his first taste of being a real hero. For a man who had thus far failed at the majority of his most important life goals.
Stop right there!
Actively being mocked by those in a position he so desperately
Ian
wanted
in those
to be
old
in.
Smosh
This
videos.
feeling was pretty damn intoxicating. Even if behind closed doors he was reprimanded for illegally carrying a firearm in his capacity as a firefighter.
Oh my
It was
God,
at this point,
Hunter
the
Biden?
late 70s, that the arson fires started becoming a problem. So much of a problem that the Glendale Fire Department needed their very own arson investigator. Someone to hunt down the evil serial arsonist, a role that John was more than happy to oblige. However, John couldn't carry out his role appropriately without a cop by his side, who could actually make arrests, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, was humiliating
Hunter
for
Biden,
John.
yeah.
And
Hunter Biden got found guilty like a week or two ago for carrying a firearm without a license. Or maybe it was something like not disclosing a firearm. It's a very, very specific charge. But you know, Joe Biden's son's a criminal. Therefore, Joe Biden's stupid and bad. It's really weird. Oh, he didn't disclose that he was doing drugs when he bought the gun. That's his charge. It's even more specific than I thought it was. I bet a bunch of right-wing people are like, yeah, got him. Fuck you. You're such a bad person. Joe Biden, I knew it. Like, what? Who the fuck would be like, yeah, I'm doing drugs. You got me.
you can really see this strange, often contradictory relationship that John has with police and authority more generally in his novel, Points of Origin. Just listen to how Phil Langtry,
looser gun laws, by the way, but we're going to charge the Democratic president's son with a gun ownership crime.
At about 8:15 p.m, his partner showed up, justifying his tardiness by saying he went to see the fire scene on his way to work. Just a poor, dumb cop, thought Phil. And then listen to this bit where his ex-wife, Marta, who he's still seeing, just like in real life, admits that she's been seeing a cop. I've been seeing someone, Marta confessed. Phil didn't respond. He's a cop. Phil lay silently fuming.
Why is Marta illustrated here, but not Phil? Why has she got the Tomb Raider ass boobs and body?
Hated cops. There are many examples of these anti-cop diatribes throughout the book.
Why is Lara Croft in the bed? What's going on?
This fixation with authority and power is also played out in the character of Aaron, who is referred to on multiple occasions as weak and pathetic. Quote, only a firefighter and not an arson investigator. In the end, just like in real life, it's clear that all Phil Langtry wants is for the cops to listen to him, to see him for the hero that he really is. In the last few chapters of the book, having convinced law enforcement of his superior intellect,
Bro burned himself
Phil is, quote,
a job.
fully in charge of the hunt for the serial arsonist, with everyone, including highly experienced special agents, putting aside their, quote, professional jealousies of the arson investigator, and allowing Phil to literally lead entire SWAT teams on high-speed chases and to kick down doors and wave his gun around. And just like in real life, civilians want to see some ID because, and I cannot emphasize this enough, John is not a cop. And then Phil, starts shouting expletives at these poor people and waving his gun around, asking them if that qualifies as ID. Of course it didn't, on the grounds of either common sense or the law, but those things never stopped Book John or Real Life John, who was frequently issued warnings. Not for impersonating a cop, which he did.
This isn't some typical American guy thinking what gun ownership can get him.
As a cop. taking things way too far, overstepping his boundaries. On one occasion, he was seen leaving the office in tears after one of these warnings before self-exiling into the forest for several days, only to return to the office when his fire chief dangled a promotion in front of him that would allow John a clear beacon of mental stability and emotional control,
or is this
peace
him?
officer status, which meant he could now carry a gun on the job.
This is real, right? This isn't even the book.
Guns meant power, something John was desperately covetous of, but far too weak to actually wield responsibly. Later, he would say of this canon event, and I quote, "An arson investigator wasn't totally a firefighter or totally a cop. We were bastard children, especially to real cops. But I had news for them. I wasn't a wannabe. I was a cop, whether they wanted to believe it or accept it. Full-time arson investigators in the state of California are defined in Penal Code Section 830 as law enforcement officers." Not sure who he's trying to convince here. Though I really don't want to, it would also be remiss of me not to mention the fact that Points of Origin contains many, many sexually explicit scenes which are so graphic that I can't read them out to you without violating both YouTube guidelines and probably a few social boundaries.
I knew there would be
Truth
some
is,
sex in
John were at least in part sexually motivated. This pathology is something that John would offhandedly bring up to his colleagues on more than one occasion, and also in professional interviews, where he once stated, quote, "Fire is an arsonist's friend, his lover. It's his fire. Sexually motivated fire setters treat their fires like that.
Bro definitely jerked off to the fires.
They're lovers. They instill
No way he
confidence
wasn't
in
in the alley behind the stores.
Not to be recursive, but I cannot overstate just how congruent this book is with John's experiences. I say this because at a cursory glance, if you didn't know the finer details, you might assert that John, an arson investigator,
burned
was
his
just
wiener.
writing what he knows. But the devil really is in the details. John can't help but slip up in this book. It almost feels deliberate at some points. Of course, it was pretty obvious to the task force that this book was a window into John's mind. It may not have been well written, it may not have even really made sense at points, but it nonetheless allowed the task force to really understand the true nature of what they were dealing with.
Bro, this guy's fucking hilarious.
Just like in real life, both characters,
yes,
the arsonist
I'm the
and
hero.
the arson investigator, were John. Now having this more in-depth understanding of his psyche, they knew it wouldn't be long before he had to set another fire. So they prepared their case and they waited.
That's so awesome.
The process was painstakingly slow, but John was being followed 24/7. He just had to set one fire.
One?
And then, in November 1991, just as they predicted, John did just that. The tracking device placed him at an arson fire at Warner Brothers Studios. His wife had been working there at the time, and he was seen using her keycard to enter just moments before a fire broke out.
Bro tried to burn his wife's job down? What an idiot.
The amigos and the rest of the task force made their way over to John Orr's house and placed him under arrest. There was no worming his way out of this. Given all that they now knew, it was hardly surprising when they found a mountain of evidence stashed in his house and car: camcorder footage, incendiary devices, a pack of cigarettes, rubber bands, a badge which would allow him to impersonate a police officer, even the yellow-lined notebook paper. There were also additional chapters and drafts of his novel, as well as letters to editors which revealed much more specific details about his fires. You can only imagine the sheer look of joy on Marv's face. He wasn't allowed to take part in the arrest, he'd asked, but he knew all about it. He'd been right. The whole time.
Marv.
He'd been right.
That's gotta feel so fucking good.
In the face of such
being like the cop with the crazy idea of a cold case, and then it gets actually like solved, and it's
room during John's first
what you thought the whole time. That's gotta go crazy.
Everybody had expected a confession. But John didn't just deny any wrongdoing. He played completely dumb, telling his interviewers that they were crazy and that this was all a complete fantasy. And honestly, if you didn't know about the sheer weight of evidence that was about to be brought against him, you might be inclined to believe John. John certainly believed John. Just listen to this statement he gave to a journalist while he was out on bail and awaiting trial. Quote, "I won't say it's ruined my career because after the trials are over with, I fully intend to go back to work. I'm not going to give up a $70,000 a year job, a career that I've developed. It'll set me back a little bit, yeah, credibility-wise, but I fully expect to be exonerated, and to hell with it, I'm going back to work." Of course, when trial time arrived, it would become quickly apparent that there was only one place that John would be going: and it wasn't back to
The
work.
slammer!
In July of 92, John was found guilty for the majority of the Fresno arson conference fires. Not all, but enough to earn him 30 years in prison. The defense tried to argue that it could all reasonably be a coincidence.
Bozo.
But it was hard to argue much of anything. What with the fingerprint, the testimonies,
Yeah, coincidence.
including
Just
marks,
his fingerprint,
and the
the same
home,
cigarette,
this
and the same
ridiculous
and
letter
rubber
that he'd sent home
bands,
to
and
a
the same
literary
yellow
agency as a pitch
paper,
for his book
and a
on
book
June
with all the
3rd,
descriptions of the
1991.
crimes.
My work is a fact-based novel of an ongoing investigation.
And finding him at a
serial
site he
arsonist
almost
is setting
committed
fires
to
throughout
setting
the
on
West and is
fire.
quite possibly a firefighter. The series has been going on for over 5 years, and I was even considered a suspect at one point. In early May of this year, I found a radio tracking device attached to my car while I attended a training conference. Ironically, my protagonist experiences the same situation. I'd already written the chapter dealing with the protagonist being tailed before I found that I was being followed. By the way, I'm not the arsonist, and the investigation here continues. My work is fictional. So John had known that he was being followed the whole time. He knew that the task force suspected him, yet he chose not to say anything, not to even attempt to provide evidence of his innocence. I'm not really sure how he thought that one was going to play out, but
And then he
safe
tried
say,
to do a
no one
fire
screws
anyway?
John harder than John screws himself. Now, there is, of course, a glaringly obvious piece of the story missing here, because that first trial had been about financial damage,
It's
risk
not
to
me,
life
by the
and
way.
property, but not about the thing that mattered the most.
Murder.
The fact that John's actions had taken 4 lives. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah, I wonder what the charge is going to be.
Because the district attorney, in a masterful move
Could be
that showed
first-degree
an extremely
manslaughter.
sophisticated understanding of John's psychological profile, had set up a trap.
Oh.
And John walked straight into it. On the 24th of
Pause.
March, 1993, looking down the barrel of another trial for the Pillow Pyro fires, plus the second round of arson conference fires, John took a plea deal and pleaded guilty to 3 more counts of arson in Los Angeles, on the proviso that he be allowed to serve all of his sentences concurrently and be paroled in 2002.
Yeah, but he got charged for the
when he'd be
crime where he
53
killed
years
somebody
old.
in, right?
Oh, but make no mistake. John was doing the calculations. In his mind, he could whittle down those years with good behaviour, or perhaps get rid of it altogether with multiple appeals.
I bet one of those
His
crimes is
thinking
the
was
crime
exactly
where they
what the
died,
prosecution
in
had
which
banked
they can.
on. They could have gone for all of his crimes at once, but by doing things in this order, they had used John's arrogance against him. Specifically, his deeply held belief that no one was really smart enough to recognise the full extent of what he'd done. The prosecution knew it would be fairly easy to get John to admit to these quote-unquote lesser crimes in exchange for less time behind bars, something he never would have done if all those charges were lumped together. But now that he had admitted that, yes, he was an arsonist and also a pathological liar,
They can
he
connect
had
him.
unwittingly established a baseline level of guilt that would be impossible to walk back, though he would almost immediately try. Now, going into further trials,
Awkward.
no reasonable person would entertain any notions of a conspiracy, and
Actually,
it would
he wouldn't have taken a
significantly
plea
less
for
difficult
that
to convince the
fire
world that John
because
was
they can't
so
double
much
try
more than,
him.
by his own admission,
But
an arsonist and a pathological liar. It was time for the mask to come off.
Getting him to basically be like, I
And the
am
world
the
was
guy
about
who's
to find out
doing
what
all
was
these
underneath
fires. They can
it.
be like, okay, well, this
Not
fire,
just
you
a
killed
man
people.
who had set a
Murder
few fires,
charges.
but a cold-blooded killer.
Ooh.
The hardware business prospered in the small
Full
community
circle,
south of
baby.
Pasadena. Hardware stores such as Cal's did well. Madeline Paulson went to the cluster of stores at least twice a week to shop. Tonight, she was babysitting her 3-year-old grandson, Terrence. She took him to the Baskin-Robbins ice cream store, and while standing in the parking lot, sharing a chocolate mint cone, she decided to entertain Terrence further by walking through Cal's. In less than 6 minutes, Madeline and Terrence would be dead. As she rounded the corner, she almost ran into a man with his hands in his pockets. She heard his breath suck in, and he mumbled his apologies as he continued on, and she continued to the back of the store with Terrence. Aaron glanced back over his shoulder and breathed a sigh of relief as he saw the woman and the kid were walking away. He pulled out his wallet and looked into it while he walked through an empty checkout line. His ploy worked. No one paid him any attention. Minutes later, Madeline heard a shrill whistling noise. Realizing now it was a smoke detector, her heart raced, and as she rounded the corner, she saw the smoke was now swirling around the ceiling. Madeline held Terrence close to her. She stared at the fire, fascinated, yet terrified. The emergency lights flashed on, but the huge amount of smoke blocked them completely, leaving them in complete darkness. Madeline's body was found with Terence's clinging to her ankles. He rationalized the deaths as he did everything. It wasn't his fault. The people, to him, just acted stupidly. And their deaths had nothing to do with the fact that he set the fire. They just reacted too slowly. It was too bad about the baby, but shit, it wasn't my fault.
I mean, pretty specific. Very specific.
While he'd swapped a few names around, the fire he'd set at Ole's had been one of the first chapters in his book. In May of 1998, it was read out in full to the courtroom in the presence of those that had lost their loved ones in the fire.
It wouldn't be first degree, I don't think. I would doubt it. It's going to be hard for them to establish. First degree is like you plotted to kill people and you have stated that, or there's evidence of like premeditated killing. They don't have proof of premeditation here. Unless he's written in the book that he's going to go and start a fire and kill people with it. But it seems, even based off of the language in the book, he's literally dissociating from the killing, saying, well, it's not my fault. They didn't react fast enough. Clearly, the goal there wasn't to kill. So that's an easy argument within the defense attorney. They could just be like, well, if this is a recollection, if you're using the book as proof, the book states that he didn't even go there with the goal of killing. So you can't even argue that that's premeditation. So, I don't know what they're going to end up charging with him. Probably second degree. Worst, like minimum manslaughter,
really
like first degree manslaughter, but probably second degree.
But it's important that you know, as the rest of the court did that day, that John chose to describe their final moments in an unusually horrifying amount of detail. As a result, John was now standing trial for murder, as well as 25 other fires, for which the death penalty was on the table. Even though all of the evidence in the trial was circumstantial, the case brought against John was damning. John's words, as they appear in the original copy of Points of Origin, line up almost perfectly with the events that took the lives of 4 people on the 10th of October, 1984.
That is crazy.
Billy, husband to Ada and granddad to Matthew, was
so
brought to the stand
twisted, bro.
where he would confirm that Matthew had desperately wanted a Baskin-Robbins ice cream that day. Not just any flavour, though. Specifically, mint chocolate chip. His favourite flavour. A small detail, but unforgettable to a courtroom who would then listen to the same story with that same detail again told in Points of Origin. The implications were crystal clear. There was only one way John could have known that detail. In spite of all of this, the fact that the fire was determined to be an electrical problem in the attic was still hanging over the prosecution's head. After all, it was an LASD sergeant who had come to that conclusion, so the prosecution brought to the stand an electrician who had wired Ole's store when it was built, and he told the courtroom in no uncertain terms that the wiring ran through the floor, not the attic.
Oh.
A blueprint pulled out by the prosecution would corroborate this.
Why would that not be the first thing to figure out? How did they...
incorrect in his assessment. And wasn't it strange, asked the prosecution, that John was the only one who had insisted it was arson that night? Why was John so confident about the link between Ole's and the potato chip fires when nobody else was?
Because he's an idiot.
Further to this, the court also heard from many of his colleagues how John had stonewalled investigations by, for example, claiming that he'd interviewed people who'd seen the serial arsonist when in reality he'd undertaken no such interviews. They also heard how John was notorious for being on the scene before firefighters had arrived, and when he was on the scene, they heard how he was unhelpful, preferring to give media interviews which gave away vital and confidential information about the so-called serial arsonists, or he'd take photographs rather than actually help put out the fires while they were still active.
He was on the case.
John was
He
also
was the
correctly
chief arson
identified
investigator.
by a number of witnesses as the dark-haired, average-looking white man that had plagued investigators for years by a number of people, including the owner of the gift store in Burbank, who would testify that the deputy sheriff she'd seen in the alleyway, the one that had helped the old man but was nowhere to be seen when firefighters arrived, was without a doubt John Orr. And of course, the prosecution was quick to remind the courtroom that a badge that would have allowed John to undertake such an impersonation was found in his home. They then showed the court footage that John had taken on his camcorder.
How did they not figure that out?
Beautiful homes on the hillside, and then footage taken weeks or months later of those same homes on fire. Then the psychological evaluation that had gotten John a rejection from the LAPD all those years ago was read out loud. Non-acceptable applicant.
Dumbass.
Reason for rejection based upon his past history and results. Currently having marital problems with separation. Recently walked off job, gave no notice. Supervisors gave him poor evaluation. Described him as a goof-off and know-it-all. Irresponsible and immature. The testing re-emphasized this. Rorschach showed him passive, indecisive, with problems with women and sex. The MMPI confirmed this and showed a schizoid person who is withdrawn from people and may have sexual confusion. Very non-objective. Diagnosis: personality trait disturbance, emotionally unstable personality. It's also interesting to note that that same psychiatrist would describe him as a bizarre profile, wanting of recognition yet hostile towards authority, passive yet also resentful. The dots weren't particularly hard to connect. John had wanted Olays to be arson because he wanted to be the one to solve the case. He hated that he'd been steamrolled by a cop. He wanted to be the hero. He wanted to be right so badly that weeks later he would make contact with one of the victim's family members, who happened to be a police officer themselves, to tell them that he didn't think the Olays fire was accidental and to ask if they'd be able to provide a copy of one of the victims' autopsies. He then made a comment about the inside of the victims' throats, which mirrored the more graphic elements written in the book that I've omitted. And when that didn't work, he would set fire to another Olays department store a few months later, an event which also featured in the book. The defense did their best to demonstrate reasonable doubts, but the fact that John had pleaded guilty before was crippling. And on the 25th of June, 1998, John Leonard Orr was found guilty of all 4 murder charges and all but one of the arson counts. The decision on the death penalty was decided in a separate phase of the trial.
Common.
Here, the jury would listen to survivors and families of those who had lost loved ones. Eventually, John's daughter would take the stand. She was well-spoken and thoughtful, and heartbroken. She'd loved and respected her dad, looked up to him. At the time, she believed he was innocent, so she asked that they show mercy.
That penalty is too
A few days
nice
later,
and
John
too
sat
expensive.
upright as the judge explained that the jury could not reach a decision, and that the panel had deadlocked 8-4 in favour of the death penalty.
Good, let him rot.
John had avoided a death sentence, but he would spend every minute of his life in a cell with no possibility for parole. It may not have been the outcome that many wanted, but the mask was finally off.
Death row is a very,
it was over.
Very expensive state to keep people within. There's a whole problem with death penalty besides
most
just
experts agree that
the
John
whole
is
idea
likely
of killing
guilty
somebody
of far
off.
more fires and potentially deaths than we can ever possibly know about. All said and done, Matassa.
Why? Well, imagine there is a section of the jail that hosts the most fucked up murderers in the area, all in the same vicinity, who can never be around each other and have to be left alone, like isolated, like monitored constantly. So much, like, it's basically like they have to have their own independent supervision, in which like regular punitive like jails have like an overall supervision. Like there's cells, there's blocks that cells are in, and like those prison officers watch over. My arm is so squeaky. Those prison officers watch over a block, But death row is its own block, but each cell is basically its own block because like there are so many specifics to keeping like a killer who's gonna die from doing something crazy, because if they're already gonna die, why the fuck does it matter? You know, that's sometimes the rationale for some of them is like, I can just do it because I'm gonna die anyway, so I might as well try to kill this person. You know what I mean? Because it's expensive. There's a lot of like security and observation and stuff like that on top of how expensive the drugs are to cause lethal injection, which is the main format of the death penalty nowadays, due to the idea of it being not cruel, because of the first initial drug that numbs the body, and then the fentanyl barbital that poisons and stops the heart. That's the expensive part. Fentanyl barbital is expensive, because it's a very precise and strong drug that they have to get like down to the purity, which is very hard to accomplish. But it costs a lot of money because there's a lot of semantics and specifics, etc., to keeping death row inmates in a stable environment that doesn't allow them to corroborate or commit more crimes, on top of all of the other services that they need to maintain their life in prison. They basically have to have their own prison observation and independent prison team taking care of them, but also at all times making sure nothing goes wrong, etc. It's a very like expensive and dangerous eggshell process. Yeah. Wouldn't a bullet be cheaper? I mean, yeah. There used to be a death penalty called the firing squad. This was a common death penalty in a lot of states besides the chair, where 5 or 6 people with a rifle, this is a very old method, by the way, 5 or 6 people with a rifle would line up in a row and aim at the guy they were going to kill, except only one of them had a real bullet. The rest of them had blanks. None of them knew. And they would all fire at the same time at the heart or the head. I'm pretty sure it's just the head, whatever. But none of them would know if they pulled the trigger. So they don't have the guilt of killing that person on their hands, despite being the one willing to pull the trigger in the first place, which never made sense to me. But yes. Also, another expense, thank you for mentioning this, is a death sentence trial, because you can't convict somebody of a murder and also convict them to death. You need to have a completely separate jury and trial process to decide whether somebody gets the death penalty. That jury also needs to consist of an entirety of people who would be willing to flip the switch themselves. Like, you cannot have a single person on a death penalty jury who wouldn't pull the trigger in this metaphorical sense. All of them need to be comfortable giving the lethal injection. Even if they're not necessarily going to, that person needs to accept and like sincerely say that they would be willing to involve themselves in putting this person down. Also there's tons of botched injections. It's not a very like determined or fully safe, secure way, uncruel way to kill somebody. There's plenty of ways it can go wrong. And they have. Also, death penalty sentencings have gone horribly wrong. People have gotten sentenced to death who did not do the crime that they got sentenced to death for, especially minorities. Especially. And that's also a huge issue. Is loads and loads of minorities, especially early on in America when the death penalty first started coming through, a lot of minorities got charged with crimes they weren't accused of, especially during stuff like the Jim Crow era. And then, like, if they got into the legal process and stuff like that, like they would get death penaltied, even if it wasn't fully proven. Like, because there was that much of a prejudice against especially black Americans at the time, but even now, it's terribly inconsistent. There are more people who have been wrongfully killed from the death penalty, most likely, than there as guilty. Very likely. I don't know for sure off the top of my head, but I wouldn't doubt that, like, if you went back and found all of them, yeah. And once again, that's a totally different judicial process. And jury, like law cases, whatever, like court cases are already expensive. In fact, a big reason why plea deals are so pushed and accepted, and like 80% of people who go to court take a plea if they're even close to guilty or think they might end up getting guilty, is because the time and the cost of a court case is a lot, because you're paying all of those people. You're paying all of the jurors, you're paying all of the prosecution, all of the defense, the judge, the bailiff, the transcriber, like all of them. Every single day per the hour is every time it goes on. And then you throw in a whole second court case, you pay everybody again. And then half the time, it's not even the correct person that's gotten guilty. It has to be a unanimous decision as well. Yeah. That's 8-4 is not enough. All 12 jurors have to say that this person should die for a person to be death penalized. So yeah, like on top of like the plea deal thing, it's also because there are so many court cases and not enough lawyers to be able to navigate through all of them. Basically, lawyers push for plea deals because it clears up their workload, because especially public defenders have a shit ton of work and have a really hard job and deal with a lot of cases because there's constantly crimes and people being put to court in general. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. I think I made most sensible.
Follow John through.
John, I hope that makes sense. Yeah. A TLDR is a big problem with the death penalties. It's inconsistency in terms of getting the right person, on top of its cruel nature, its expensiveness, and its targeted, like its history of targeting minorities in terms of its like use. So it's a very interesting thing to look into. It's an entire process that is very just not worth it. You can't even, we're not even going into the morality of it. Like, in my opinion, we don't have any evidence of what happens after the lights turn off in our brain. You know what I mean? So we don't have a guarantee that getting rid of somebody on this earth means that they're going somewhere worse. So at the end of the day, you could just keep a guy here, not let him do anything for 50 years because he decided to permanently halt somebody's ability to do anything, because we don't have any concrete evidence of something after. So like, when we have a direct ability to, in a cheaper point, to keep somebody from doing anything again and let them really waste the rest of their life, why aren't we taking that option? So, not to bring moral stuff into this, because I'm sure some people disagree and would rather have people just gone, but like, it is cheaper to keep them held for the rest of their life in regular general population prison. Genuinely. Because they can just get put into the group and treated in the same system. Yeah. Anyway, let's finish up this video.
Believes that John Orr set nearly 2,000 fires between 1984 and 1991. And according to Glenn Lucero, there was a significant drop in all types of fires that John was known to set, with one source stating that that drop is as much as 90% for brush fires
I don't know.
in the nearby foothill areas after John's arrest. That would most likely make John the most prolific American arsonist of the 20th century. The use of the word arsonist rather than pyromaniac
90% less fires.
Arson is the criminal act of setting fires, and pyromania is pathological. An illness. For a very simple yet extremely important reason. You see, for pyromaniacs, setting fires is an overwhelming impulse which is followed by a sense of relief or pleasure after the act. It's a, quote, uncontrollable impulse to set fires in which the gratification results from the fire itself.
Very
and not
similar
from
pattern
any
of behavior
motive
that they
like
find in serial
revenge or
killing, the
money.
compulsion.
And this point is a very important one to
Compulsive
make.
behavior.
You see, the defense tried to portray
That is
John
not a
as
good
someone who
photo.
had no control, who
That's
suffered from
very
an illness.
unfortunate
But
for
as
John.
has been emphasized by both prosecution and numerous psychiatrists, John actually isn't a great fit for the diagnostic criteria of a pyromaniac. Nothing emphasizes this point more than a story told later by John's ex-wife. Because after a few years of marriage, John just upped and left her one day for seemingly no reason. Eventually, he tried to win her back, but she was having none of it, so she changed the locks.
Impulsive.
She didn't make the connection until much later, but fires started happening in nearby parks and mountains. Some of them got really close to her home. And when they did, John would be back at her house checking in on her. John did this a lot. She didn't altogether mind at the time because she'd had problems with a stalker since John had left. Someone knocking on the doors in the middle of the night, standing out in the shadows, watching her. It terrified her.
That's crazy.
Of course, the man in the shadows, she now knows, was John. John knew what he was doing. He knew that he was hurting people, taking things too far.
Hi. We got, look at Darcy's dinosaur toy. We got her a Stegosaurus toy. You like it? Yeah. Yeah. The time? The time? She said dada. Come here. Somebody get ya. This is my baby. What do you think? We went to a baby, like a toy store today, and this is the one toy she laughed at. So we had to get it. He's a Stegosaurus. Oh, back to mom. Bye. Night. Whoa. Woo. Woo. Rah. Oh, she's so tired. She's rubbing her eyes. Night. Mwah. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Mwah. Good night. She had this little squeak.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye? You said bye-bye? Nope. Tired. Say, get me out of here.
Ruining lives, but he continued to do it anyway. To this day,
Bye-bye.
decades after John has set his last fire, he wholeheartedly maintains his innocence. He's even written a book about it, not Points of Origin, but Points of Truth, which can be summarized as, you're all wrong, it's all circumstantial, and I'm at the center of a conspiracy. Over the years, many
Bro.
journalists have seemingly been stumped by John's behaviour, unable to make sense of the story they've just told. Does John really believe he's innocent? In those quiet moments inside of his prison cell, does he
Wild.
really believe that he is still the hero?
No.
Some have pondered if perhaps this vehement denial is the only thing that allows his fragile psyche to live with what he's done.
Very
I don't know if
possible.
those are the right questions to ask.
Wahoo happy
But you
16
do have to
months.
wonder, why did John write Points of Origin? Why write about crimes that you committed? Was there a part of John Orr that was trying to make sense of a deep internal struggle? As many have suggested, was this John's way of actually helping to catch the bad guy, which was, in the end, himself? Or was it just his way of bragging? Was he just so arrogant that
Very
he really
interesting.
thought everybody else would be too stupid to notice if he confessed to it all and swapped a few names around? While these are certainly interesting discussions to have, it's worth remembering, I think, that when it comes to any question that tries to get at the heart of why John has done what he's done and why he continues to deny it in spite of all the evidence, John provided us with the most important clue a long time ago. After his arrest, still putting on the pretense of innocence, John was asked about why arsonists do what they do, and this is how he answered. Quote, "A murderer is an aggressive individual that confronts their victim and kills them, physically facing that person. An arsonist is weak, non-aggressive, an insecure type of personality." In other words,
Interesting.
arsonists are cowards, even if he can admit what he did to himself. He's far too weak to say it out loud to the people that needed to hear it the most.
Interesting self-report.
John's thought process is deranged, but I don't think it's particularly complicated. And anyway, if you ask me, I don't think it really matters what
it
John
just
thinks.
seems that like cognitive
John's brand of
dissonance is
heroism
playing a
was always
factor,
an
and he's
act,
just trying to
whether he
distance
thought it
himself
or
from what he
not.
did.
A mask to hide the monster underneath.
I don't know. It's just a weird
And
self-awareness,
all
though.
masks eventually slip.
A lot of killers get caught doing something stupid. It's true. That's a great video. Wow. I loved that. That's good stuff. I'm subscribing. Whoa. The hell was that little flare when I subbed? This is only their 6th video. Damn. Damn, gonna have to look into this more, no doubt. All right. Who wants a palate cleanser? Look at him go. The Bubble Master is back to entertain you. He is so silly. He's still what? He just keeps going. Still going. I wonder what he's thinking, bro. Splishy splash. He looks like he's working a job. Look how mad he looks to be there. Fuck. Head empty. Splishy, splashy.
Weeby, deeby, sleeby, teeby, meeby, weeby, dweeb, ebby, led wild. Do out mountain in the sparks. TB, lebby, TB, eby. TB, PB, earbeds. Debby, murder.
TB, EB, BB. That's a good one. Me when I stim a little too hard. Oh, what a satisfying, what a cute video. All right. Very cool. Time for some autism. How audio enhances the horror of Five Nights at Freddy's. Fair warning, this video regards a horror game and it will feature some jump scare sounds and overall creepiness.
Warning, the following video regards a horror game and it will feature some jump scare sounds and overall creepiness.
Ooh. Great intro, wow.
Hello. I'm Scruffy, and today we'll be talking about Five Nights at Freddy's, an indie horror game that has shaken up the genre and become a worldwide phenomenon, starting from a single developer with a small budget. And in light of that developer, Scott Cawthon, supporting developers of Five Nights at Freddy's fan games, and also because Halloween is coming up soon, I'd like to take an analytical look at the ways sound has made this game so compelling and spooky. I'll only be touching on the first game for now, and I won't be addressing the lore of the game much since there are still so many mysteries about it. Now, it's been plenty established that Five Nights at Freddy's is, or was, frightening, if you haven't played it before. And small wonder, it capitalizes on a broad discomfort with animatronics, robots that fall right in the uncanny valley. Too humanoid to be a cartoon, but moving too mechanically to pass for something living. But even more than that, you are trapped in a single spot, the security office of a pizzeria. While these animatronics not only move where they aren't supposed to, while you aren't looking, but are coming for you specifically. It is a nightmare scenario, built off of two pillars: the absence of information, which prevents planning, and the absence of action, the inability to fight or flee. Now, if this were actually a nightmare, those two would perpetuate until we wake up in a cold sweat. But since this is a game, and there is a win condition, some of these pillars have to be sacrificed to allow the player a chance to think under pressure and win over their stress.
Essential.
And this is where developers like Scott turn to visual signals and audio clues to dole out some control. I say clues because while a map of the pizzeria and camera feeds of the animatronics are clearly helpful visuals, it's more complicated when it comes to audio. Some audio works to your advantage, giving you information, and some audio works against you, muddying information, creating unknowns, and even contributing to the absence of action feeling. Let's break down each of these, starting...
This is going to be very fun for me because I'm a very audio person. Like, when I play like Dark Souls games, and you'll see this when we play Elden Ring in a little bit, I dodge. If I'm able to dodge based off of a sound, I do that rather than the visual cue. It is way easier for me to detect an audio cue than it is to see a visual cue. It is just something that my brain is really able to do. Like, I'll go into Valheim because I've been playing Valheim. Enemies with bows have a very specific draw animation, and basically you can hit the block button half a second after the audio stops and get a perfect parry. Like, there's the timing of the audio is somehow satisfactory and able to correspond to me better than watching the physical timing of the visual of them. Like, I'm able to hear stuff way better and time it way better based off of that than anything else. So I like this kind of video. This is going to be fun for me.
With the advantageous audio. That is, any audio that helps you form a plan and figure out how to survive. In a scenario with absence of action, you are desperate for information like this. Although at first, nothing you hear seems advantageous. It all starts out unknown, which is yet more stressful. It's only after you spend some time in this environment and listen for patterns that you start to pick up where advantages lie. And the sound files of FNAF confirm this line of thinking. For instance, there are 4 different sounds for pots, pans, and oven doors clanging about. Must be important, especially when you can hear these sounds even without using the camera system. Initially, this sound is a stressor, but eventually you can pick up that the sound is louder when you look at the kitchen camera, which only has an audio feed. And then you pick up that Chica, the chicken animatronic, is nowhere else to be found. So all along, this sound was actually trying to help you understand that Chica is currently in the kitchen. And going forward, you can determine that without using the camera, saving you some power. Not every advantage in the game has an audio clue, but the ones that do are well designed.
The kitchen.
Another one you'll hear is Freddy's voice whenever he moves into a new room. There are 3 versions of this sound.
I never knew this. I knew about the kitchen noise. That's pretty obvious. I didn't know about the different tonal differences in
Again,
this.
this can be heard on camera or off, so initially it sounds like some otherworldly threat is just laughing at you. But eventually, with enough camera usage, you can tie Freddy's movements to his laughter.
I didn't know
this.
In
fact, Freddy's difficult to see on camera, and you've got to conserve power anyway, so for some players, it could be easier to count the times Freddy laughs to indicate how close he is to the office. The audio may be unnerving, but since it forms a pattern in an otherwise unpredictable environment, it's advantageous. Now, there's other audio that forms patterns but doesn't give you an advantage. These are just good old sound effects.
I never knew that.
Scored directly to what happens on screen. There are the sounds of the camera feed failing when an animatronic you're watching suddenly moves.
Why is TTS out of stock?
There's the sound of Foxy running down the hall to indicate you have a very limited window of time to save yourself.
Oh my God,
and the sound of him banging on the door.
Pang of anxiety from that.
These sounds are consistent with their actions, but the player never really picks up help from them.
You don't listen.
They're mainly to
me?
immerse you more in the environment.
I didn't say that.
And you'll notice most of them
said
are
we're
diegetic.
listening to this.
That is, most of them are sounds that the in-game world would be making.
Yeah, guys, I saw the
There
Pikmin
is
videos.
one sound that doesn't seem diegetic, however, and that's an audio stinger when Chica or Bonnie appear right in your doorway.
Hey, man.
That sound is not manufactured by a camera or machinery, and I don't think it's meant to come from Bonnie or Chica. It's more of a classic horror music cue that makes you jump a little more at something sudden. A stinger. In fact, I think it's extended technique on a string instrument slowed down 100%. Here it is.
Is that a Freddy viola? Or violin?
I'm not sure about that. The little sounds at the very end remind me of handling a violin, but suffice it to say, it is non-diegetic music rather than an in-game sound.
I never thought about it.
These sounds don't help or harm you. They just make the world more real, direct,
Gotta be a distorted
intense.
instrument.
And now, we get to audio that's special for a horror game. Audio that's actively trying to scare you, or even working against the information and actions you have. Let's
Important. And, you know, last time I talked about a game who does this well, but doesn't do anything else well, people got very mad at me. But this is a very essential part of horror, but isn't the only thing to make something a good horror game. Like, you can't do just detrimental audio and make a good horror game, because the second the player understands that the audio is meaningless, it doesn't matter. And then you dissipate what was referred to earlier as the absence of information, and that detrimental audio becomes non-diegetic, therefore non-essential, non-threatening, non-intimidating audio. So you can just walk through the game totally totally nerved, not unnerved at all, totally fine, complacent, unenthused. But last time I brought this up in a game that you walked half the time through with zero punishment, everybody said I was an idiot, so it's fine.
Unpack the different ways audio can deter you from beating this nightmare. First, we have what I'm calling muddied information, audio that isn't clear or that blocks other audio signals. For instance, the cameras make haphazard static noises when they experience interference, or when you can hear one panning back and forth. The little bit of audio coming from camera feed is also garbled. You know, it's put through a couple of audio filters to simulate a poor transmission of sound energy. So all in all, you hear very little straight from the source. Plus, there are other sounds getting in the way. The loudest distraction by design is the fan in your office. This remains on for the entire night, buzzing incessantly. And here, let me clarify something.
Which
I mentioned in a previous video about Animal Crossing New Horizons that having some non-zero sound ambiance actually makes an environment calmer than one with total silence. However, if that ambiance is loud enough that it's harder to pick up audio patterns that matter more, it can become stressful all over again.
And it can even sound like it's changing pitch. You've seen those, you've heard those audios where it sounds like it's going up an octave, but it isn't.
Approaches my 1 year.
It stays at the same audio, but your brain is trying to make it make sense because it's just going and you're expecting it to go somewhere, that your brain hears it going up. So this kind of stuff is very off-putting and uncomfortable because human brains want to connect and complete things because we want things to be sensible. So when we're brought with senselessness, it doesn't make sense. And our brains try to justify that and complete those sorts of things. This is why you get stuff like exaggeration and overtones. That's the word, thank you. And like stuff like eyewitness testimonies being baffling or like exaggerated or false, because there's confusion within those moments and your brain is like, I don't remember this. I have to make this make sense. So your brain makes it make sense even if that's not what happened or what is happening.
Fan does quiet down when you're focusing on the camera, but that's using up power.
Also why
so
people hear things when it's
of
silent.
Sacrifices between you and the game here.
It's why people have a lot of auditory allowed,
the more power
scares
you use
when
up.
things are
and
eerily
the more you
silent
your
because
power, the more
their
information
brain wants
is
to put stuff
obfuscated
there.
behind filters, distance, and noise. And then here is the truly devious part. Hidden beneath the noise of that blaring desk fan are not only the sounds that impart information, but other sounds that don't, and are either meant to confuse you or just scare you more. Sounds like this strange swirling noise.
Classic. Oh, dude, I wish I had like a
doesn't really signify anything
jump
other
scare.
than a creepy atmosphere that can't be identified.
This would have been
Same
perfect
with
for
these
it.
even subtler noises.
Wait, that's fine. We can just do this.
They're just barely audible under the fan. But this sound in particular is resonant enough that you can discern it. Your ear just can't make out any details, and thus it's another potential stressor. This time, though, you don't pick up any pattern or advantage from it. It's just sometimes there, conveying some vaguely metallic sound far in the distance. Other red herrings fit a bit more specifically in the location of a children's pizzeria. Sometimes you'll hear this room recording of a pipe organ, internally called circus.
Oh, he's just playing the whole thing, huh?
A festive little jingle like this feels right at home in a kid's pizzeria or an arcade, although it's
clown in the
juxtaposed
corner
with
jerking
the
it.
nightmarish scenario. And once again, it's not giving you any real information, it's just getting you that much more stressed. Same with the song Foxy will occasionally sing, internally called Pirate Song 2. You can hear both that and circus anywhere in the game, and this one specifically can be traced
also hear
to
it
Foxy's
voiced by
stage,
Kellen Goff in the
but it
FNAF
doesn't
movie.
signal anything about Foxy's erratic behavior.
Very cool.
It's misleading clues mixed in with the legitimate ones. One more misleading clue interestingly begins as a legitimate one. At the start of each night, you receive a previously recorded phone call from another employee who has been dubbed Phone Guy.
His call on the first night sets the scene, tells you how you're in danger, and what actions you have to keep animatronics at bay. He keeps things vague, partly because he doesn't know all there is to know about animatronics, and partly because he's skating around the suggestion of mortal peril to try and keep you from quitting. But as the nights progress, you realize that the animatronics will start moving even while this call goes on, and the call itself
may
gives
even
you
say
less
they get
and less advantageous
quirky.
information after night one. Instead, Phone Guy sometimes opts to deepen the lore of the game, and sometimes gives you suggestions that aren't actually helpful. For example, during night 3, he advises the player to sit still and try and play dead once Freddy is outside the office. Yet doing so actually has no effect. These phone calls become serious red herrings. They directly speak distracting information to you, and the sound of the phone call interrupts other important sounds, like Freddy laughing. What initially seems like your only lifeline in this scenario has become yet another problem.
Now, the last category
Never
of
really thought
detrimental
about it like
audio
that.
isn't
That's true.
necessarily messing with your ability to parse other sounds. These are sound effects that make you feel like you're dealing with a supernatural threat. I gave the following sound effects a special category because they're a lesson in themselves for crafting horror game sounds. The slightest hint of language in an otherwise corrupted, garbled sound. It's like there's information or threats hidden in a message to you,
Golden Freddy
but not
noises.
only is the message not in any discernible language, but it also doesn't sound like the messenger is human at all. Scott gives the animatronics in all his games humanoid sound effects, mainly because they've been possessed, but also so that the animatronics can appear to attempt communicating with you, and it just comes off as alarming supernatural wrath. Here's a sound you'll hear when Bonnie or Chica are right at the corner of your office staring sidelong at you from the camera while their heads twitch. This only happens after night 3, when you've been with them for a while, so it seems to convey the animatronics' aggression ramping up.
I wonder
But
if
why
he'll
are they
ever
making a
release
sound so
what that
reminiscent
is.
of
I wonder
backwards
if he'll
human
ever,
speech?
like...
Is there a message encoded in there? Why does it sound so off? If we players
What if it
had
was
the
just
time
him
to
talking
answer
about,
these questions we ask,
like,
we'd figure out that it
his
is a
favorite
recording of a
sub
person
shop?
reading an excerpt from Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramhansa Yogananda.
With the formant tuned down,
Similar to animatronics going in the visual uncanny valley, sounds like these go in an audio uncanny valley, where they're definitely closer to language than any other sound in this library, but they're too distorted for you to recognize who made the words or what they mean.
But your
These
brain wants it
vaguely
to make
vocal
sense,
sounds are
and that's
littered
stressful
throughout
that it
FNAF
doesn't.
1, from quick flickering hallucinations to Night 5's phone call, which is another garbled, lowered passage from Autobiography of a Yogi, talking about how marvelous mechanisms will make lives easier in future generations. Freddy's laughs also count as
Wait, so
vaguely
they
vocal
did find
sounds.
the
They are
audio?
slowed down versions of a child laughing.
That's crazy. I didn't know they found out what it
And
was.
if Bonnie or Chica are already in your office, but you have the camera up to
Oh,
avoid them,
no,
they'll make their presence
click.
known with these labored breathing noises. There are 4 of these sounds, and unlike most of the sounds in the game, these are dry and remarkably close mic sounds, since Doom is right in front of you at that point. And on that note, let's
I have
talk about
never
more
heard that
endgame
noise.
sounds, beginning with losing the game by letting animatronics get into your office. Before you hear any right in front of you, you might first test the light button and find it no longer works. Ordinarily, the light gives out a harsh electric hum when you turn it on, and it flickers. The sound is not consistent. When you first test this light, the sound and flickering combined immediately demonstrate absence of action. They make you think, this shoddy little light bulb is my last line of defense? Of course, as it is one of the few actions you can perform, you immediately miss it, and tension spikes up when you suddenly hear this short, curt sound instead. Presuming you can't hide in the cameras long enough, you're about to get the infamous Five Nights at Freddy's jump scare, the sound for which I'll be playing in 3, 2, 1. Yeah. It's pretty well known at this point that this is a cut-off, overdriven sound of a child yelling.
It's a woman's scream from
Which fits
Inseminoid
the lore behind the
1981.
game, and again, is just vocal enough. If you're unlucky enough to encounter Golden Freddy, this sound is slowed down 100%. No natural comforting sounds to be found here, but it is a big sudden release of tension.
Dislike.
The difference between that and winning the game is that in winning the game you get laudatory sounds of chimes and children cheering, which are finally close and resonant sounds free of heavy distortion and garbling. And then, in a twistedly comedic fashion, those celebratory sounds get truncated by silence as the next night begins. The final endgame condition is using up all your power, which shuts everything off with this long descending drone. I'd say there is cold comfort here. It's a release of tension from checking cameras and shutting doors constantly. Like,
but
there's
an
less
increase of
information
tension
to worry
because
about
you know
not
something's
having.
coming, but you don't know when.
But there's also total absence of action. All you can do is wait for whichever comes first. Freddy's blood-curdling scream, or the jubilant chimes of 6 a.m.? After this first stage of just you and the drone, we get the second stage, where Freddy shows up at the door and plays his tune, the refrain of an aria commonly called the Toreador March from the opera Carmen by Georges Bizet, and played on a music box, once again juxtaposing the sound of childish play and lullaby with impending supernatural death. The refrain itself is fitting. It describes the Toreador, the bullfighter who dreams both of the bull's eyes watching them and the love that awaits them if they succeed. Good metaphor for this moment, only to be cut off again by the final stage. Total silence, total darkness, no more information, no more action, no more. It's stressful, right? I'm not going to play a jump scare here. I'm just showing how a little silence goes a long way. All of these sounds go a long way. They perform functions beyond just a scary atmosphere. They deal in the information and agency with which the player controls the game. FNAF 1 doesn't solely rely on sounds to create its atmosphere or to play with the player. The sounds are rather a supplement to everything else. The animatronics don't make any noise on camera, and they still prove scary enough just to look at, especially when they stare right back at you. But then the sounds as they approach the office enhance the experience, supporting the frightening visuals with unsettling and unnatural voices and noise. It's not the only way to craft a horror game soundtrack, but it's a token of playing to audio's strengths, and that is how Five Nights at Freddy's turns a nightmare into a game. I'd like to thank my friend Wolfgang for helping me put together the script.
He just said exactly what I tried to convey, or what I tried to convey.
Back at you. But then the sounds as they approach the office enhance the experience, supporting the frightening visuals with unsettling and unnatural voices and noise. It's not the only way to craft a horror game soundtrack, but it's a token of playing to audio's strengths, and that is how Five Nights at Freddy's turns a nightmare into a game. I'd like to thank my friend Wolfgang for helping me put together this.
Vid. Okay, I gotta pee. Do you guys want to watch this? It's a video about pranking crypto games, apparently.
Cryptocurrency and NFT.
Quick 23-minute video. No. But it's clowning on him. It's not supporting it. It's bullying them, apparently. We're watching it. Fuck you guys. I gotta pee. All right, let's get it. Storm, thank you for the 11 months. Pastel, thank you for those 5 subs earlier. Arctic, thank you for the 47. Jam, thank you for the 16. Kenny, thank you for the 56. Bonnie, thank you for the 7. Professor Sprout, thank you for the 16. Woodland Forest, thank you for the prime sub. W's in chat for a new freak. Woodland Forest, welcome. Kyrie Creature, thank you for the 31. Potato Beep, thank you for the 22. Plasma, thank you for the 2 years. Hee hee, thank you for the tier 1 sub. Welcome to the freaks. More W's in chat for another new freak. Hee hee. Gaji, thank you for the 4 months. Timer, thank you for the 7. AMA, thank you for the 13. Larksian, thank you for the 19. Stickman Jim, thank you for the 14. Cool. I didn't play the video. Yeah, because I want to watch too. Dork.
Cryptocurrency and NFTs. These much despised buzzwords weaseled their way into the gaming industry in 2021, and somehow they still haven't left. Remember how they said NFTs would let you bring a pickaxe from Minecraft into Call of Duty? Obviously, that never happened, but desperate crypto bros never got the message. Asset flips, Ponzi schemes, and broken promises form the holy trinity of the perfect crypto game. With Steam having placed an outright ban on anything crypto or NFT related, these unregulated investment schemes have been relegated to the bowels of the PC gaming marketplace, the Epic Games Store. It's hard to be unbiased at this point. I've played well over 50 crypto games, and not a single one of them has justified a rating higher than 5 out of 10. But stunning advancements in AI technology have introduced a whole new wave of internet sloth. It was only a matter of time before the crypto bros got their hands on a Mid-Journey subscription, and oh boy do they love this thing. But I'm John. I still make content the old-fashioned way, which means it's time for another diarrheal deep dive. I've carefully chosen 6 brand new crypto games from the Epic Games Store for today's video. My selection method was simple. Type blockchain in the search bar and download the results in alphabetical order. Besides, Tim Epic said that they wouldn't allow crappy games on their platform, so how bad can they be? One of them features such egregious copyright infringement that they preemptively shut their whole website down just from seeing my face in their Discord. Yeah, it's gonna be a good episode. Awaken is a fighting game and open-world metaverse built on Ethereum blockchain.
Within Awaken immersive gaming world, players will have a chance to immerse themselves in the traditional combat domain with real interactions seamlessly integrated into the metaverse.
The store page features no gameplay footage at all, or screenshots, just 4 seemingly AI-generated images. After launching the game and signing up for an account, my eyes are immediately cursed with the image of a smooth, nude man. Looking to the top right of my screen, I noticed that I was assigned a Bored Ape NFT as an avatar.
Whoa.
Funny, NFT bros are now stealing from each other. Aside from the profile page, none of the other menu options seem to do anything at all. They all say, the feature will be available in later version of the game. We apologize. This leaves us with only one working
Captain
option.
No
Fight.
Cock.
It looks like my clothes finally started rendering, thank God. Pressing this button transports us to some sort of hub world, devoid of any life. Aside from the advertisements plastered everywhere, there's a terminal in the center where we can queue up for a match. I can guarantee that there is not a single other player online, so instead of waiting in the queue forever, let's try a custom match. Can't do that either. It still requires 2 players. It's worth noting that this game is a total resource hog, despite there being nothing going on. I thought that it might have some sort of crypto miner, but after digging through the files, I didn't find anything suspicious. Just 2 gigabytes of Unreal Marketplace assets, the crypto game standard. With nothing else to see in-game, it's time to turn to their website and social media pages. Equally confusing, as even here, there's still no gameplay footage. Even their Discord server is devoid of any conversation. It contains nothing but a few hundred people who spam GM every few hours. Awaken is a strange ghost town of a game. But don't worry, they'll be releasing their very own NFT collection and token soon, so make sure to invest. Somebody already did. -100 out of 10. Blade Right is a multiplayer melee battle royale game. Up to 20 players fight in a magical style arena with only one survivor in the end. Developed by the Singapore-based Lusheng PTE Ltd, Blade Right is currently available in an open beta state on both mobile and desktop platforms. Whoa, check out those jiggle physics. They sure got their priorities straight. Generally, I'm not much of a fan of mobile games ported to PC, especially when they don't bother to rescale the UI. Blade Right is no exception, as it's plain to see that their priority was in creating a mobile-first experience. That being said, I'd be lying if I said that this was unplayable. While unpolished, the core gameplay is actually pretty smooth. The controls work just fine on a keyboard and mouse, and if it wasn't for the oversized UI elements, this could pass as a PC exclusive. The game begins with an introductory tutorial, explaining the different types of attacks, special abilities, and craftable items. Blade Right is your typical battle royale, mixed with a minor MOBA element. 20 players drop into a map with a shrinking safe zone, and the last man standing wins. Combat is strictly melee, and you have the ability to
a battle
dodge,
royale
roll,
at this
and block
camera
attacks.
angle would be
Each one of the game's classes
cool. Good
also
though.
has a unique ultimate ability that can be activated once you fill up this flame bar. The bar is filled by dealing damage, either to other players or one of the many NPC enemies scattered across the map. My character's ultimate allows me to turn completely invisible, which is overpowered, especially since you can continue to fill your flame bar while hidden, which allows you to basically stay invisible as long as you keep attacking. But I'm pretty sure that every match was against bots. All enemies have a complete lack of object permanence, and as soon as I went invisible, they would just turn around and walk away. As I mentioned earlier, Blade Right has a bit of a MOBA element. Before each match, you can select a few items to take with you into battle. These items have a variety of effects, such as increasing your damage, health, or armor. However, you don't
just think
get
about
these
like the
effects for
one
free.
guy
Each
who's
match, you'll need
fallen
to kill
for
the
this game.
NPCs that spawn in the map to gain currency.
Has
This
spent
currency
money.
is then used to activate one of the items. These items are gained through opening reward chests, which are randomly dropped from NPCs in matches or as rewards.
Doesn't
for
realize
winning.
he's been fighting
Chests
bots the whole
require a
time
key to
'cause he's
open,
not
which
good
can be
enough at a
purchased
game
using
to
the game's
realize that they're
premium
like
currency,
fake.
gold. But this gold currency isn't even a crypto, it's just your regular old microtransaction. They even offer a variety of different purchase sizes, although unlike most games, they don't give you a discount if you purchase in bulk. Oh, you recommend the $400 package?
Recommend?
Of course you do. You can craft and upgrade items outside of a match to increase their power, and you can also trade them on the in-game marketplace. However, this doesn't use crypto either, it uses gold. So, what about this game uses crypto? I'm actually not too sure. Their website features an NFT collection, but these appear to just be your run-of-the-mill randomly generated JPEGs. It looks like they have some items that you can buy using the Solana cryptocurrency, but there's only 5 for sale, and there doesn't appear to be any purchase volume. While on their website, I noticed that Battlerite has a partnership with G2 Esports, and they have some videos of a tournament that they held a while back. Esports orgs and crypto sponsors. Where have I heard that before? Anyway, I highly doubt that any G2 members actually play this game any more than their contractually obligated minimum. Returning to the game, I continued to browse through the available features, but found myself quite confused. There's a lot going on, but not much is explained. The translation is also pretty bad, with some dialogue boxes just being in Chinese. In the end, this is really nothing to write home about. There are dozens of these mobile battle royale games, and I'm not in the target audience. But does a game like this really need crypto? No, of course not, but we already knew that, especially when they already have a fully functioning cash shop and marketplace without it. But Bladerite is far from the worst crypto game I've ever played. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. It's not really my type of game, and it seems like it could easily become pay to win, but I'm sure somebody out there will play this. It's unplayable. In all seriousness, Blade of God X is the sequel to the mobile game Blade of God Vargur Souls. Unfortunately, it is only accessible during designated test periods, and apparently, I just missed one. So, we can't play it, but we can watch some gameplay footage on YouTube. Yep, this is definitely a video game. A bit of a sensory overload. It feels more like dangling keys.
It's like a Final Fantasy knockoff, the type of stimuli.
The original Blade of God mobile game doesn't have the best reviews on the App Store, and it seems like it's filled with microtransactions.
Loads of stimuli.
Since this is
ready to go crazy,
I can't give a detailed opinion. Maybe I'll come back later. Probably not. VAD Strike by Dislocate Games is the first Web3 multiplayer arena shooter that allows gamers and creators to play, create, and own custom worlds in-game. Oh boy, create, play, and own.
Gulp.
We've only heard that like, what, 50 times now? Unfortunately, with most crypto games having a player base smaller than the average Roblox lobby, there isn't much for user-generated content. Besides, crypto bros aren't exactly known for being artistic, creative, or original. The screenshots and trailers on the store page paint a very confusing picture. All of the gameplay footage looks quite competent. This is very polished for a crypto game, especially one as obscure as this.
Looks a little too fast.
The artwork, on the other hand, is all fresh off the Mid-Journey presses. What gives? Now that I look a bit closer, I think the characters on the logo are all AI generated too. Curious. Anyway, what's the harm in another crypto miner on my computer? At least someone's using my graphics card to its fullest. Launching the game brings us directly to a character creation page. Strangely, the player model doesn't match the game's artwork at all. Now that I've selected my player model and weapon loadout, let's try and connect to a game of VAD Strike. Seems like there's only one server, and there are 0 players. I guess this is some sort of testing map? I don't really know. Let's try and start a bot match, then maybe at least we can see how the game plays. What the hell? This is actually really good. It's like a modernized version of Quake, but with parkour. The gunplay is quick and responsive, the AI is actually competent, and the art direction is slick and cohesive. Somebody pinch me, I must be dreaming. A good crypto game? But after about 20 minutes of playing against bots, I started to get suspicious. The VAD Strike and Dislocate decals placed around the map seem really out of place.
Please stop calling it that.
Why would they make all of their promotional material with AI if they actually had real artists? And most importantly, this is actually a great game.
Golly, I wonder.
Could never. This skepticism led me to delve further into the game's files. If they just stole some other game and slapped the VAD Strike label on it, then maybe they left some evidence behind. Interestingly, there's a file named Steam App ID, despite this game being from the Epic Game Store. Opening it shows an app ID of 967460. Red Eclipse. Hey, this is VAD Strike.
No way.
No, wait, the other way around. VAD Strike is Red Eclipse. Red Eclipse is an open source, free, and community-created first-person shooter that's been consistently updated for over 15 years. VAD Strike literally just copied the entire source code from Red Eclipse. This is the most despicable example of crypto slop I've ever seen. But what do they intend to gain here? let's dive a bit
I bet
deeper.
people played this game when he
Strike
released
is
this
listed
video,
as
and that
being
dev was
developed
like,
by a company called Dislocate Games, which I've certainly never heard of. A visit to the Vag.pro homepage results in an AI-generated ocular assault. My god. They've used every buzzword in the book to describe the open source and modular Vag engine, which they absolutely did not create. But they must be pretty popular, since their official Discord server has exactly 10,053 members. Wow, what a specific number. It's almost like they purchased 10,000 bots and then had 53 real members join, especially since the majority of these accounts were created on October 14th. This same logic can be applied to their Twitter page of over 37,000 followers. Jumping back to their website and ignoring the horrendous AI art, we can look at some of the other things they have to offer.
What the fuck is happening there?
First up, the official Vag comic. This abomination features 85 worthless pages of AI-generated slop, coupled with text taken directly from the official lore of Red Eclipse.
Nevertheless, the fierce battle
did I just see that? Was that
of what was once
was that
the
a
most
slur?
powerful consortium in the galaxy, in the system of the Red Vage.
As far as the crypto aspect of the game goes, there's actually nothing currently for sale. However, they do mention a future token and NFT collection launch.
Is it appropriate to go back to that?
AI generated.
There! I mean, am I crazy? I mean, yeah, it's a different spelling, but still. How? It's spelled differently, but how else would you say it? Do you see what I'm saying? That's crazy. Oh my god. Oh, I muted it somehow.
Directly from the official
That's
lore
wild.
of
Nevertheless, the fierce battle continues for the remnants of what was once the most powerful consortium in the galaxy.
Wild.
In the system of the Red Vage.
As far as the crypto aspect of the game goes, there's actually nothing currently for sale. However, they do mention a future token and NFT collection launch.
Wild.
Going further, it quickly becomes apparent that just about every aspect of Vag Strike is copied directly from Red Eclipse. Even the gameplay guide is a word-for-word copy of Red Eclipse, except it has a bunch
baffling.
of
I was not
and their
prepared for
white
that.
paper has artwork from Dead Space.
Dead Space?
That's not open source.
Isaac Clarke?
Anyway, there's a section on the website labeled
What are you
Team,
doing here?
so let's take a look at the likely fake faces behind this project.
Isaac's grunting noises
Strike
when
is
he's
being brought to life
squishing
by
zombies.
Dislocate Games, a next-generation gaming studio founded by an all-star team of gaming and software veterans with combined decades of extensive experience.
Very random side note. Apparently, there's a first-person version of Dead Space that I really want to play. That sounds so fucking cool. Anyway.
And building and shaping consumer products in incredible games like Haunted Dungeon, Rise of Realms, Dino Wars, and Beatrice Apostrophe Island. Jeez, I thought I was verbose. That sentence had 52 words.
The song sounded like Harbin.
Below this bold-faced lie are the 6 bold faces of the thieves behind this project. Without any LinkedIn pages or last names, it's impossible to verify if any of these are real people. Given what we've seen so far, it's more likely that these are all AI-generated portraits or
No
stock
way.
images. But we'll come back to this in a moment.
That is
Taking a
so
step forward to the
hilarious.
official Dislocate Games website, we can take a look at some of their previous projects. According to them,
Rose
these are the
created
products
an
that their
entire
team has worked on
ghost.
over the past decade. I guess I was wrong. They really do have some development skills. Just kidding. Every single one of these games are just stolen open source projects. Rise of Realms, while unplayable, features a screenshot from the open source
what is
RTS
that
game
graphic?
0AD. Haunted Dungeon is actually a game called The House by Archer Cott. All they did was modify the code to remove any mention of the original author, although they forgot to rename the browser tab. And Beatrice Apostrophe Island is another open source project, a game called Edelweiss by Felix Mariotto. While the repackaging of these open source games is technically legal, it's ethically dubious.
Who is
especially when
falling
you
for
consider
this?
that Dislocate is preparing a $2 million fundraising campaign based on work that they didn't do. Let's jump back to those fake team members. One of these is not like the
token?
other. Gideon K. There's a link to Gideon's very own website where he shares a heartwarming story of his life as a Nigerian entrepreneur.
Cool.
There is a list of all the companies that he's founded, although not all of them seem to link to active websites. The first, called Ravel, advertises itself as an invoicing platform. I signed up for an account, only to find that the website has no discernible functionality aside from asking you for your credit card info. A subscription to this service costs $1,000 a month. His next website, called Grammy.co, is some sort of platform for selling WordPress templates. This website in itself is an almost completely unmodified WordPress template. How did I figure this out? Well, Gideon forgot to remove the YouTube button on the website, which links to the homepage of redq.io, where you can purchase this website template. If you're going to copy the homework, at least remember to change the name. But just pointing and laughing at such a blatant ripoff isn't enough. If Epic Games isn't moderating their own storefront, then maybe I can help them out.
The lead developer of Red Eclipse.
They stole your entire game.
What? Hang on.
Quinn is the lead developer of Red Eclipse, his pride and joy for the past 15 years. After informing him that someone had stolen his entire game and relabeled it as their own, we decided to play a little prank. We jumped into the VADstrike Discord and asked if we could speak to their lead developer. This must have scared them a bit, as within 30 minutes they had deleted the VADstrike Twitter and website entirely, attempting to cover up any evidence of copyright infringement. Unfortunately for them, we had already archived everything. Gideon immediately recognized Quinn as the game's true developer, and he sent him a private message. In an attempt to save face, Gideon offered to bring Quinn on as an advisor for VADstrike, offering a cut of the success that the game might see. As an important side note, Red Eclipse is licensed under the Attribution Share-alike license. This means that you can freely modify, alter, or sell any part of Red Eclipse. It's an open source game owned and built by the community. All that matters is that if you do copy Red Eclipse, you give proper attribution to the original creators. VADstrike did not do this. Instead, they removed all mentions of the original license and instead claimed that they built VADstrike themselves. This alone would be more than enough for Quinn to file a copyright takedown. But to make things even worse, they replaced all of the credits for the game's custom community-created maps, saying that they were all created by Dislocate Games. So not only are they taking credit for the work of the core developers, they're taking credit for the maps created by the community. These guys are actually so lazy that they didn't even manage to fully scrub the Red Eclipse logo, and it can be found in multiple places in VADstrike. Even the screenshots on the Epic Game Store listing are stolen. These are all taken directly from the Red Eclipse Steam community page. But Quinn is a smart guy, and he knows that nobody would ever play VADstrike anyway. We can actually see just how many people played the game, since they're all connecting to Red Eclipse's main server. Yeah, that's right. They couldn't even figure out how to run their own servers for their stolen game. Aside from a few connections from Nigeria, only a few real players actually joined the server. They all wandered around for a few seconds, said WTF in chat, and then disconnected. Far from the 12,000 players that VADstrike brags about. Since VADstrike is based on a fork of the Red Eclipse source code and runs on the Red Eclipse servers, Quinn was able to push an update to VADstrike, unbeknownst to the scammers. So now, as soon as you try and connect to a server, the game locks up, presenting a pop-up message redirecting you to Red Eclipse. Then the game closes, becoming permanently bricked and unplayable.
No way.
All you can ever do is view this message or close the game. Sorry, VADstrike, but didn't your parents ever teach you not to steal? If anything, this is an endorsement for the impressive quality of Red Eclipse.
That's so funny.
Most open source games are pretty bare bones, but Red Eclipse is legitimately a very fun game. And if it wasn't for the laughingstock that is VADstrike, I never would have discovered it and the awesome community behind it.
I hope people have played this game for them.
This
is really cool looking.
For Red Eclipse, and what perfect timing too. They just released the long-anticipated 2.1 update, which I've been playing all week. They even added me as a character to the game. Give it a try. It's on Steam and it's free.
Wow.
Strap on your irons, saddle up, and make the Wild West yours in the world's first Web3 Battle Royale. Would you look at that? It's published by our old favorites, Gala Games. I've already reviewed 3 games that Gala published, and 2 out of those 3 are currently suing Gala. But we'll talk more about that another time. Let's stick to Grit. This game was pretty hyped up back in the earlier days of crypto gaming, and it caught a bit of flack for selling $1,000 NFT horses. At the time, Grit was unplayable, as it was still in development, but it looks like the game finally launched in 2023, so
to be
let's
fair,
give it a try. After downloading 35 gigabytes of content,
Grit is
I
a
launched
sick
Grit
game
and
title.
successfully
Sucks that it's
reached the
from
main menu.
a bunch of dirtbags,
into my
but
Gala Games account, and nothing happened.
Grit would be a good
Server
name
error.
for a game.
I tried a bunch more, but it would fail every time.
Get on Grit.
Maybe it's down for maintenance. Heading over to the game's Discord server reveals that this is an issue everyone's experiencing. Apparently, the servers have been down for about a month, and there's been no communication from the dev team regarding a resolution. Heading back in time a bit, it would appear that there have actually been no updates since March 2023. But don't worry, you can still buy NFT weapons and horses, or loot boxes. I'm not usually one to speculate, but given Gala's terrible reputation and track record for screwing over their devs, I would imagine that there's some sort of dispute going on behind the scenes. It's likely that the Grit team has just given up and abandoned the project. One of the great benefits of blockchain technology is its immutability, which means that there are no takebacks or refunds. But don't worry, because you can use that horse or gun NFT in another game. Oh, wait, you can't? Oh no, whoops. Gala Scams strikes again. Red Chaos is an almost entirely unmodified build of the Unreal Engine Lyra starter template with swapped out assets. The game's description is a borderline illegible wall of text without paragraph breaks, and the preview game's description is a
In 2060, humanity achieved a significant breakthrough by exploring the Red Planet. The first colonies erupted on Mars, and thanks to advanced technology and humanity's unrelenting endurance, the planet became prosperous and capable of self-sufficiency. However, life there remained difficult and dangerous, pushing people toward the dream of turning the Martian world into a corner of Earth. In 2125, the latest terraforming technology opened the door to dreams. Scientists and engineers created a unique project to transform the atmosphere, revive the oceans, and create a favorable climate. With each terraforming step, the colony expanded, the infrastructure became more sophisticated, and the number of artificial intelligent-powered technologies increased. However, in 2140, disaster struck. One of the AIs responsible for terraforming made a critical error, causing catastrophic events. An explosion destroyed part of the city, systems were shut down, and Mars was plunged into chaos. The Eos region was the grasshopper of a new era on Mars, the center of terraforming and colonization of the planet. It was home to advanced scientific and industrial complexes aimed at changing the climate and creating suitable living conditions. Do you like all my adjectives? Normal people use all of these adjectives all the time. I lost my place. We're moving on.
Borderline illegible wall of text without paragraph breaks, and the preview screenshots look like an asset pack showcase. The login screen, which ironically requests my Web2 email address, features a T-posing player model against a gradient background. They are looking for $5.85 million in funding and are offering tokens that promise a return on investment through staking. According to their entirely AI-generated white paper, their team has worked on such titles as the Saints Row Remake, Battlefield 2042, and Payday 3. Not exactly the type of experience that I would be flaunting. There is no information about any of these developers, nor any real names associated with the project. The only info I could discern is that they are Russian, since that's the language their website defaults to. -12 out of 10. Arcbound is a Japanese-style hash and slack action RPG built in Unreal 5 with the support of blockchain technology. No, this is crypto slop. It's a top-down action RPG, like Path of Exile or Diablo, except if it was made by a second grader.
I love when
it's
cameras
playable,
do
but
this,
it's
though.
lacking in just about every aspect. The UI is archaic and poorly translated from Japanese, and the combat is repetitive at best. I only played the game for 30 minutes, but within that time, I don't think I ever took damage once. The enemy AI only ever focuses on your NPC party members, who act as bullet sponges. The artwork isn't half bad, but the audio is grating. Absolute silence would have been way more enjoyable than this bootleg Link shouting over endlessly looping music. Fittingly, Arcbound offers a tremendously uninspired gameplay loop, barren of any originality. Non-differentiable, randomly arranged dungeons, and a hub world with endless fetch quests. I guess there's something to do with NFTs somewhere in this trash heap, but I couldn't stomach it for long enough to figure it out. After clearing my already flooded hard drive of Arcbound's 2GB footprint, I headed to the game's website to learn more about the project. Yeah, who am I kidding? I don't give a shit about any of this, neither do you. These crypto craps just blend together at this point. Always the same, sell the bare minimum product at a premium price, hoping that gung-ho, short-sighted marks pile in. Surprisingly, Arcbound seems to be getting called out in their own Discord server, where a player noticed an interesting coincidence. 7 years ago, an early access title by the name of Obsidian Legacy, except with a C instead of an S,
classic.
flopped its way onto Steam. The game received an average score of mostly negative due to its unfinished and buggy state. This is the exact same game as Arcbound, cover art and all. They literally dove into the landfill, grabbed the game, and hosed it down with crypto. This is exactly why I love making these videos. I never even have to make anything up or exaggerate. The truth is almost too ridiculous to believe. The jokes write themselves. Anyway, this game sucks.
How does a
I'd
single
rather
person even
unscrew
think
20
they
lug
can
nuts
get away with
my
this
bare
sort of thing?
hands than ever think about this again.
That's what blows my mind.
Thanks for watching today's episode of Crypto Slop Showcase. I owe a huge thanks to the team behind Ready Clips for not only building a game worth stealing, but for helping make the lives of crypto scammers a little bit harder.
That's
and
really
to you
funny,
all,
bro.
the Bag Holders Club, for keeping the channel afloat. Your unwavering conviction.
Very funny, like twist. Well, I thought it would be Elden Ring time, but I'm seeing a video that I'm a little too curious about. That was posted 6 hours ago. What are your thoughts? Because this is a very fun story to me to watch. That says 9. I opened it 3 hours ago. Then I opened it right before stream. So I'm interested. I'm interested in watching this. It's only 15 minutes. It's good for people to know this because this is quite the story so far, and I'm only assuming more will come up, given more and more people are validating this claim within Twitch, within reporting, within YouTube. There was a guy from YouTube who said they didn't sign Dr. Disrespect because they asked Twitch what the deal was.
Disrespect is on the verge of one of the largest downfalls in creator history, going from being one of the most respected and popular streamers on the internet to being hated by everyone after admitting some awfully disturbing actions.
He was talking inappropriately with a minor. Where I truly believe this scumbag needs to be banned off of the platforms that he's on.
I don't know who's really going to support him at this point. Like, what kind of person is going to watch Dr. Disrespect? If you watch him at this point, you just have to be coping, basically.
Hi, I'm the Internet Anarchist. I create weekly YouTube documentaries, and today we'll be diving into the case of Dr. Disrespect, a once beloved streamer who is now being viewed as an unfaithful predator. But to fully understand the current situation, we first have to go back to where it all started. In June of 2020, Dr. Disrespect, who was the face of Twitch at the time, was permanently banned from the platform. The suddenness of the high-profile banning, coupled with the silence from both Dr. Disrespect and Twitch on the matter, would turn the ban into one of the most infamous and mysterious bans in Twitch history and spark several conspiracy theories. This wouldn't be helped by his final moments on stream appearing like he found out something extremely bad was about to happen.
We'll get through this, Champions Club. I know it's a tough. Life's weird right now. We'll get through this, okay? And
Hey, Christopher.
fuck.
You get to try.
This strange behavior would leave viewers to leave comments such as, "Whatever's coming, it ain't gonna be a small matter." That mood he gets into near the end, "I'm scared." As well as, 242, I kind of wanted to get off, and now I don't want to get off. He realized it would be his last stream ever, so he said that. Despite these comments, no one could have been prepared for the real reason he was actually banned. In August of 2020, Doc would return to streaming, but this time on YouTube. His first stream on the platform attracted a massive audience, and he seemingly came back stronger than ever, going on to claim that he had no idea why he was even banned in the first place.
Why did you get banned? Guess what? I want you to look me in the fucking eyes when I say this. We still have no idea.
Over the following 4 years, his ban would remain a mystery, and he would grow his YouTube channel to over 4.7 million subscribers, and continue to be one of the most popular streamers on the internet. But this would all completely change in 2024. On the 22nd of June, Cody Connors, an ex-Twitch employee, would make a tweet that would mark the beginning of the end for Dr. Disrespect. The tweet read, "He got banned because he got caught texting a minor in the then existing Twitch Whispers product. He was trying to meet up up with her at TwitchCon. The powers that be could read in plain text. Case closed game. The tweet was making big claims with little to no evidence to back them up, and the reaction from the internet would be extremely mixed, with some
Guys, how many times have I told you to turn your whispers off because people are weird? How many times? Not only do you get scams, but like if you've ever said your age in a chat, it's possible somebody's tried to DM you because they're fucking weird. I say this all the fucking time. Turn that shit off. Example fucking A. In bold italics right here. Like,
jumping to the conclusion that he's a creep despite the lack of evidence, and others waiting to hear more about the situation or calling Cody an unreliable source of information, with comments reading, "Hey doc, I heard you like him young. We need sources and more information, like who, as well as source, just trust me bro." While Cody's tweet didn't explicitly mention Dr. Disrespect, Jake Lucky's repost would result in a response from Doc that would ultimately make the situation so much worse. Jake, seriously, I get it, it's a hot topic, but this has been settled. No wrongdoing was acknowledged, and they paid out the whole contract.
Guys, God, when was the last time I talked about this? How many creators, like, do subsequent damage just by opening their mouth? I can't remember the last time we talked about this. There was a specific situation, and I can't remember what it was. It was a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember, but it's so wild to me. Like, it happens all the fucking time.
The tweet would garner significant criticism for the strange and concerning use of vague and legalese language, leaving readers wondering why Doc said no wrongdoing was acknowledged, instead of just denying the career-ending allegations. Following the significant backlash, Doc would make another response on the situation.
It's very, very ironic to claim yourself to be a very, like, direct, like, cutthroat guy, and then to use very legalistic language in tweets about the thing you're being accused of. Extremely ironic to like pretend to be that sort of guy and then to use every single like legal teetering language to like not be implicating yourself in a legal manner. It's very funny and totally out of character for the persona that is him. So it's, I mean, people caught on to it immediately, obviously.
Adding a bit more context, stating, "Listen, I'm obviously tied to legal obligations from the settlement with Twitch, but I just need to say what I can say since this is the f***ing internet. I didn't do anything wrong, and all of this has been probed and settled. Nothing illegal, no wrongdoing was found, and I was paid. Elden Ring Monday." While this tweet was better than the first, it still had strange language, like no wrongdoing was
and
found,
Monday was
and that
quite
he was
the day,
quote, paid. Ultimately, the tweet would result in an even more polarizing response from the community, with large figures such as the Axeman coming to his defense, stating, "Degenerate troglodyte losers are trying to slander him with serious accusations that could destroy his entire career, while providing literally zero proof. In other words, some pussies have a vendetta/grudge against him and want to damage his reputation as much as possible, and others critiquing his use of vague language against such serious allegations. Bro, why won't you say, I was not talking to a minor trying to meet up with her at TwitchCon like what was alleged, but things were about to get much worse." On the 24th of June, while Stock was streaming Elden Ring, a game company he co-founded would make a tweet that would change everything. Reading, "On Friday evening, we became aware of an allegation against one of our co-founders, Guy Beam, aka Dr. Disrespect. We assumed his innocence and began speaking with parties involved. And in order to maintain our principles and standards as a studio and individuals, we needed to act. For this reason, we are terminating our relationship with Guy Beam immediately. While these facts are difficult to hear and even more difficult to accept, it is our duty to act with dignity on behalf of all individuals involved, especially the 55 developers and families we've employed, along with our community of players." The tweet went live while Stock was streaming, and viewers claim this is the exact moment he saw the post.
You know how you run things.
Yes! Listen. Why is it sped up? Hold on. I'm gonna see if I can slow it down.
And viewers claim this is the exact moment he saw the post.
Copyright? Oh yeah, that might not be a bad idea. Or a bad point. Maybe people are claiming it. Or him.
You know how you run things.
I'm not gonna do that then. But like, the music as he's reading the tweet, bro.
Towards the end of the stream, Doc seemingly came to terms with reality and what was awaiting him in the near future.
You cannot script it.
When I say step away, I think
you cannot have to relate this that,
to
bro.
Midnight Society, but maybe I step away from there too. Just completely remove myself from the scene. It's what I need to do.
The following day, on the 26th
I don't know,
of June
that sounds kind of
2024,
soft.
Dr. Disrespect would post a tweet
Kinda
that
like a
would not only possibly
snowflake,
end his
Doc.
career, but completely confirm the reason he was banned from Twitch, with his response reading, "The Twitch ban. Hello,
Me when I
I'd
can't
like to
take
make a
the
quick
heat in the
statement.
kitchen I
I've
claim
always
to
been
make."
upfront and real with you guys on anything that I can be upfront about, and I'm always willing to accept responsibility, which is why I'm here now. First and foremost, I do want to apologize to everyone in my community, as well as those close to me, my team, and everyone at Midnight Society Game Studio. A lot of people have been left in the dark about what
Number
happened
2
yesterday
of
with
opening
Midnight
mouth.
Society and we made the painful decision collectively to have me step down. Our team is full of incredibly talented and good people that have high career ambitions and families, and I'd never want to jeopardize the culture we have carefully crafted. Everyone has been wanting to know why I was banned from Twitch, but for reasons outside my control, I wasn't allowed to say anything for the last several years. Now that 2 former Twitch employees have publicly disclosed the accusations, I can now tell you my side of the story regarding the ban. Were there Twitch whisper messages with an individual minor back in 2017? The answer is yes. Were there real intentions behind these messages? The answer is absolutely not. These were casual, mutual conversations that sometimes leaned too much in the direction of being inappropriate, but it's nothing more.
I mean, I already tweeted this, but like, in what way is it teetering in any way inappropriate? Appropriate? In any regard, that's too far. How is this even like a nuanced point? You can't sort of be inappropriate. Even if you like, how is this even like the language in which we are using? Like, how can you be kind of inappropriate to a minor? You just are inappropriate. Like, that isn't like a thing that might have happened. Like, you don't, there isn't like a, it just doesn't make sense. In any regard, doing that's inappropriate. In any way, in any factor of being inappropriate towards a minor is inappropriate. Even the teetering and pushing of that envelope is inappropriate, like full stop. Because especially, and I don't know if the video will mention this, he knew that this person was a minor. In fact, that's been verified. He knew that. Knowing that and pushing that anyway is inappropriate. Like, how is that not understandable? I don't understand that. In any regard, being inappropriate near a minor or towards a minor is inappropriate. Like, that isn't like full stop. You can't like sort of do it, especially if you knew it and did it anyway. That sounds like you thought about it and did it anyway, which is inappropriate. But some people are like, nothing happened.
Nothing illegal happened, no pictures were shared, no crimes were committed. I never even met the individual. I went through a lengthy arbitration regarding a civil dispute with Twitch, and that case was resolved by a settlement. Let me be clear, it was not a criminal case against me, and no criminal charges have ever been brought against me. Now,
like, I think the main argument at this point is like people arguing the age of the person or like the lack of the messages being publicized, which is a very legal problem, by the way, if that were to happen, especially because this is a settlement case. Like there's a lot of people who would get in a lot of trouble if they were to do that. But like, yeah, that's the main argument, is they want to see the transcript. And it's like, I can't imagine. Once again, I can't imagine that anything made towards this individual that could be deemed sexually inappropriate is in any way justifiable. Like, there isn't like something in there that would be like, well, that's not much to it. It is, though. All of it would be. That's the problem, is of course we're not seeing it, because I guarantee you he probably does it. If this is very true, he would not want this to come public, because any segment, any inch of inappropriate behavior towards a minor that you fully knew as a minor is a pretty substantially coherent and inappropriate decision. And any sign of inappropriate conversation within that text would damn him immediately. Like, there isn't any escape from that. There isn't. That's crazy. And like, who's to say in 2017 when this happened? I mean, I don't know, actually. Because it happened in 2017. They banned him 3 years after, right? In 2020. That's the timeline, right? Yeah, I mean, messaging a fan, no matter what age there is, already makes a weird dynamic. Totally agree. I have messaged fans before, but not for like no reason. I have some people do I do merch with some people who watch me before. In fact, one of them literally does art for my VOD channel now and was half of the merch that was on sale recently. And like, I employ them essentially in that way. And that's different. That's something that I'm willing to do and help them, and we support each other. Big shout out to Hollow. But like, that's all it is. There isn't like you don't just message fans unless you have some malicious intent at the end. I'm not saying for sure, but it's not very appropriate. It's not a very appropriate thing to do, bare minimum, because of the dynamic a creator has over their fan base. Because I have a position of authority over you that, one, I don't see or understand, but I respect from you guys. And I never want to intentionally abuse that. I'm not an infallible person, but I would never want to abuse that position. Like, I'm never going to say it wouldn't happen potentially by some accident, but I would never want to intentionally do that. I feel like the intent of doing this just like out of nowhere is malicious and inappropriate enough, in my opinion. Because I have functioned for 5 years as a creator without having to do anything close to this. There's no purpose besides something that seems malicious, in my opinion. And there's plenty of creators who have been totally fine not doing this or not needing to do this anything. Like, seriously, There's just no level that isn't inappropriate. It's such a weird piece of language to say too much in the direction of being inappropriate, but nothing more. How do you sort of be inappropriate? That there isn't like somebody concoct a situation that's sort of inappropriate. Nobody takes something sort of inappropriately. It's either appropriate or inappropriate. Socially, that's the rule. People don't sort of take things the wrong way. It's either taken correctly or not taken correctly. It's really hard to find some sort of nuance there. You don't just like kind of make an inappropriate joke. Jokes aren't kind of inappropriate. They are or aren't. There isn't like a gray area for this type of situation. You can't like teeter this line. There's no line to teeter. You go over or don't. I just don't see a situation in which that it isn't, you're just in there. In my opinion, I guess nobody fucking cares what I'm saying. I'm sure there's plenty of people coping with absolute max like lefty loosey on the gear to like huff it as much as they can to think that he's still being a nice guy and not actually doing anything wrong. But like, who gives a shit, really? But like, I just don't see this. Like, I don't see this being like the language and the disassociation of the intensity of what this implies is very telling to me. Like, just from what I've studied, like the legalistic language, the shrugging off of his own action, like too much in the direction of inappropriate, but nothing more, deems that he doesn't see what he did as wrong. He doesn't see what he did as wrong. The language he's putting there is distancing himself from the severity of this. That is very disassociative, like language cognitively. Like he is removing himself from this bad situation because he clearly doesn't see it as bad. All these people do, and he's removing himself from this bad by saying that, well, it wasn't that bad. Like, what? It's not actually anything illegal. That is very like distancing language. Like there is a lot of legal and distancing language in this message. It's very wild to like digest. Like you can see in the writing, one, he's not trying to implicate, and two, he's distancing himself from this. It's crazy. And on top of it all, he uses the argument that nothing illegal happened. You can be a piece of shit and never break a single law, man. That doesn't get rid of the stank on your body. You're still going to smell like shit. Like, you're still going to smell like shit and people are still going to want to flush the toilet, man. Like, even if you've never broken a law, if you stink like shit, you're going to get flushed. There isn't like, not being caught legally doesn't exonerate you of being a piece of shit. A great example is To Catch a Predator with Chris Hansen. Obviously, that show took a turn, but did a lot of the people in that show get full on arrested? No. Like arrested, charged with a crime, sent to jail? No. A majority of them didn't. Because they didn't do anything illegal. Because they were stopped, first of all, which is the morally correct thing to do, is to step in and stop it from happening. So a minor, especially in these situations, isn't ruined for life. Like fucking ruined for life. We're talking like a child's entire future is spun and changed because some fucking dude can't keep his stupid ass dick away because he's got some stupid perversion. Like, how is this an argumentative point? Like, these people were going to do something, and they got stopped and baited into falling into a trap in the sense of Chris Hansen's show. But they didn't legally get in trouble. But you know what they did get is publicized and publicly shamed, because what they're doing is predatory and disgusting. And this is no different if all of this is true.
Now, from a moral standpoint, I'll absolutely take responsibility. I should have never entertained these conversations to begin with. That's on me. That's on me as an adult, a husband, and a father. It should have never happened. I get it. I'm not perfect, and I'll fucking own my shit. This was stupid. Now, with all this said, don't get it mistaken. I've seen all the remarks and labels being thrown around so loosely. Social media is a destruction zone. I'm no predator or PDF file. Are you kidding me? Anyone that truly knows me knows where I stand on those things with those types of people. F that.
He's got
That's
a daughter.
Different level of disgust that I hate even hearing about. Don't be labeling me as the worst of the worst with your exaggerations.
He has a daughter.
Get the F out of here with that shit. But I think I've said what I needed to say regarding the ban itself. That's it. That's why Twitch made the decision in 2020. To my team, community, industry friends that have supported me, I apologize. I wish I could have said all this sooner. You guys have always showed me and my family love and support throughout all these years. We love you guys like you can't imagine. I have the best community and circle. If any of this has made you uncomfortable, I get it. You don't have to support me anymore. But just know you have always been greatly appreciated. But trust me when I say this. To all my haters that live and breathe social media with zero real life experience, I don't give an F about you. Finally, if you're uncomfortable with this entire statement and think I'm a piece of shit, that's fine. But I'm not effing going anywhere. I'm not the same guy that made this mistake all those years ago. I'm taking an extended vacation with my family as mentioned on stream, and I'm coming back with a heavy weight off my shoulders. They want me to disappear? Yeah, right. Following the response, Doc would continue to edit the tweet, removing the word minor and then adding it back in due to backlash, with a reply stating, he edited out minor.
Distancing language, once again. Trying to omit the real nail in the coffin of this accusation. Attempting to distance the severity of the crime from himself. Why would you do that? Why would you need to do that? It's a very interesting decision.
Got caught on it and then edited it back in. Quite the apology when you're still trying to skirt responsibility. As expected, the tweet would go incredibly viral, gaining over 60 million views within just 12 hours, leading users to dig even deeper into his history, with user Chrissy digging up a clip of Doc allegedly admitting to cheating on his wife at the 2017 TwitchCon, which also happens to be the same year he was allegedly messaging the minor to find out what she was doing at the convention.
As you guys know, I have a beautiful family and a wife and kid, and I want to be transparent that I've been unfaithful. And
the response from the YouTube community was brutal to say the least, with creators such as Penguin.
Oh my God. I remember for some reason there was an emote on Twitch that was a CD and people were using it in his chat to reference him cheating, and I can't remember why that was. I can't remember why that emote was the one in particular. Was it Force and CD? No, I think it was Force and CD. And then there was a regular CD emote that people started using instead, I think, or something like that. I could be misremembering.
Zero, some ordinary gamers, and CoffeeZilla all making videos on the situation and calling out Doc for his disgusting behavior during Penguin Zero, aka Charlie's video, who would completely destroy Doc.
Just the emoji?
How he
Maybe not. I don't know.
His
Maybe it was just
multiple times.
Now the doc actually edited this statement
cheating,
twice.
Disrespect.
So initially he posted it with the word minor in it, saying, were there messages with an individual minor? The answer is yes. But then shortly after he published it, he edited the word minor out of it. So he removed that. He redacted it like a fucking CIA document, trying to bury it, just snapping it out of existence. So then it read, were there messages with an individual? The answer is yes. But people were quick to notice the edit, and you can actually check edit history on Twitter, which I didn't know you can do, but you could clearly see that the original no longer matched the current one because
also Twitter's such a shit show that half the time you just see the original anyway, and even if you reply to it, you can see the original anyway. And Twitter's just like, this is an old version, go to the new one, but you can still look at the old one. Like, you know, it's just.
He took the word minor out. So when people caught him red-handed, he just edited it one more time to put the word minor back into it.
Charlie would also critique Doc's strange
only
ending
edit,
of
by
the
the
tweet,
way.
stating,
The
He
only
tries
edit.
to close this statement with a really
It's not like
hard,
he edited it a bunch of
cheesy
times, that was
80s
it.
action movie one-liner. They want me to disappear. Yeah, fucking right. Granny shifting, not double clutching like you should. You're lucky you didn't blow the welds off the intake. I'm not leaving.
Takes a break.
It's really kind of ridiculous to put that there with accusations like this.
Finally, Charlie would counter the argument that Doc possibly didn't know the age of the minor he was talking to.
Now, what's not clear and what a lot of people are coping with is that maybe Dr. Disrespect didn't know the age of the person he was communicating with. But I truly feel if that was the case, Dr. Disrespect would have mentioned that, saying that he had those communications with this person that he believed was of age but turned out to be a minor. I think if that was the reality of that situation, if he truly communicated with someone that he thought was of age but turned out to be a minor, I think he would have mentioned that in this statement, but he didn't. He didn't say that he was under the impression he was communicating with an adult. He just says that he had conversations with an individual minor. He doesn't say anything like, oh, they were actually one day away from being 18, or I really thought they were, you know, in their 20s.
Didn't even try to justify
like
it.
That. And I think if that was what happened, it would have been mentioned here. I really do.
To make matters even worse, even his previous friends and defenders took a stance against him after he admitted he was having an inappropriate conversation with a minor, with Nick Merck stating,
Yo, checking in. I'm seeing everything on Twitter, and I read through Doc's tweet, and in that very tweet, he basically confirms that, you know, he was texting an underage girl, and it went weird sometimes, you know, and look, just to be blunt and straightforward, man, that's inexcusable, it's unacceptable, right? No excuse for something like that.
And with the Act Man stating,
What's up, everybody? This is the Act Man here, and this is my final verdict on the Dr. Disrespect situation. As you might have seen, I've been pretty vocal about this on Twitter, and Doc has finally given us the truth. At long last, we know why he was banned, and it's not good. So first, I want to read this part where he says, it's the most important part of his tweet. Were there Twitch Whisper messages with an individual minor back in 2017? The answer is yes. These were casual mutual conversations that sometimes lean too much in the direction of being inappropriate. I've seen enough to catch a predator to know when somebody is using language to soften the blow, to downplay what actually happened. You know, it's a strategy where you can admit something you did that was terrible, but you can maybe make it seem not as bad as it actually is.
One question looming on everyone's...
Was that not what I mentioned earlier when we were talking about it off the tweet? Is that not what I just said earlier? Very typical language in terms of a criminal distancing from a crime. Very typical language. Super like hollow wording, super like gap creating within the conversation. It's very once you kind of pick up on it and understand if a guilty person, and this isn't obviously full on 100% true or provable, but a lot of the time when an accused person is the perpetrator and tries to get out of it or justify it, they use distancing language because they themselves cannot rationalize doing something. And they also are trying to dance around the fact that they did it by trying to make it seem okay in some regard. So you see it a lot in crime. Exactly what I said earlier.
his mind is what is going to happen to Dr. Disrespect. Based on his response, he's planning on taking a break and returning as usual. However, only time will tell if he'll make a comeback from such disgusting and character-ruining behavior. Whether he was legally charged or not, that does not change the court of public opinion. And being in your late 30s having inappropriate interactions with a minor is career-ending no matter how good your reputation is. I think Mudaha put it well.
You know, at the end of the day,
it's just
this
inappropriate.
is just a gross thing to be doing. And there is no defense for this kind of behavior. And I firmly believe, like, as, you know, even on YouTube, like, this guy shouldn't even be streaming anywhere. Like, what is proven is if you are interacting in a negative fashion with anybody that is a minor, you are not to be trusted on any social media platform whatsoever.
It really seems like this is the beginning of the end for Dr. Disrespect's reputation and career, with new articles coming out from inside sources claiming he did know the age of the victim and was sexting with them, YouTube removing him from their partner program, and his YouTube channel losing over 50,000 subscribers within just days of his response going live. The more information that comes out revolving around the situation, the worse it begins to look for Dr. Disrespect. Over the coming weeks, it's likely that he will lose hundreds of thousands of subscribers and possibly have one of the biggest downfalls in recent creator history, alongside Illuminati, who lost her entire audience. Click the video on screen to find out more.
That's very abrupt stop. Jeez. Well, that's a pretty, yeah. A pretty good summary of what happened at the moment. Pretty wild and still going on. And I don't think less is going to come up. You know what I mean? Has there ever been another instance where Twitch just flat out bans somebody for no reason? Name one. Name one other person who's been banned and there's been like an ominous question as to why. Not really.